Hello folks and welcome to today's live OurGame show. Myself, Shane Stapleton, as always joined by Michael Verney and star of the hurler, Tony Kelly. Not Tony Kelly now from Ballyhale, but a different Tony Kelly from Waterford. You'll know straight away by the accent. Tony, congratulations on the hurler. And look, first off, can you give us sort of an insight into what it's about? And I'll find an image to throw it up on screen there.
Yeah, absolutely, lads. First of all, thanks for having me. Really appreciate that. So The Hurler is a film based on a web series that I did, nearly over 10 years ago now at this stage, I'd say. It's about a character I play called Gar Campion. He's Ireland's most notorious hurler. And basically, Gar is the first hurler in the history of hurling to fail a drug test for performance-enhancing drugs. And Gar then has to go and basically he decides to try and rebuild his shattered reputation by going and agreeing to coach Ireland's worst hurling team, which is somewhere in the middle of Waterford.
Right, okay. So not Ballygunner anyway is what we're hearing.
Definitely not Ballygunner. No, definitely not Ballygunner. They're doing okay these days, apparently.
So I'm going to bring up the poster of it here. Look, a slick enough looking poster, the hurler, a champion's tale. Tonight is tonight the premiere?
Yeah, the world premiere is tonight in up in the Big Smoke up in Dublin. So when I'm done with you guys here, I'll be heading up the M9 and getting me suit on and all that kind of stuff for the premiere tonight.
Yeah, it's absolutely gas. One of your co-stars, Elva Trill, and you have a fairly stacked lineup there. I used to live with her for a couple of years. Great girl as well. But can you tell us about the lineup that you have?
Yeah, look, beyond anything else, the cast, I'm just absolutely blessed with the cast. You know, you mentioned Elva. I can't believe you used to live with her, and I can't believe I'm only finding this out now. But yeah, Elva is just incredible. As people know, like Elva was in Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, last summer, and her credits speak for themselves. But like on an Irish comedy level, John Kenny is there. He plays Gar's kind of father figure and coach. John Kenny of Dunbelievables and Father Ted fame, and everything in between, Mario Rosenstock, David McSavage, Carl Spain, God almighty, even, listing them out is incredible. And of course, Marty Morrissey himself makes a cameo, and Daisha hurling legend John Milan as well.
Can I just touch it briefly, Tony? What's your own background? Like, would you have played hurling yourself? Would you be a big hurling fan, or what club are you? That kind of thing. How did this whole idea? What was the genesis of the idea?
Well, I love hurling. First of all, being a proud Daisha man. We strive to break that curse every year and get our hearts broken every year since I was a lad. Anyway, but I unfortunately was not good enough to play myself. I don't think I would have even gotten a game for the Junior B team that Gar goes down to coach. It was that bad, and it's funny because my granduncle, Billy Kelly, down here in Waterford is basically the godfather of Ireland's own hurling club down here. And he used to always be getting on to me because I'm a soccer man myself, it's what I played. And he used to be getting on to me for playing soccer when I was a child, like an actual child, and asking me to come down to Ireland's own. And I did, I used to go down. I used to do all the summer camps and all the things that they used to run. But I remember playing one hurling match ever. I think I was 10, and I did actually score a goal, but I scored it with my left foot. So that'll show you what my are actually like.
So how did it gain the traction to go from, like, you talking about a web series before to becoming a film?
I guess, like, when the web series came out in 2013, and it was, I think we kind of underestimate how far the internet has come in 10 years or more. You know, in 2013, like there was the Instagram was there, but you couldn't upload videos to it. It was very primitive. And I think even at the time, I don't know if Facebook video was a thing. We were uploading stuff to YouTube and putting links up on our Facebook pages. And that's kind of how we were getting people to see things. But I can't remember now, but I think there's over 20,000 views on the episodes of the original web series. You know, I know like some of the sports sites, balls.ie and what's now the 42 and all that, were getting behind it because Milan made a cameo in the original pilot as well. And that was kind of gathering a bit of steam. And like that was 2013. And I'll be honest with you, nothing really happened until 2015. I ended up getting nominated for this award over in Hollywood, which is just ridiculous when you think about it. I got nominated for 2 awards it was called LA Web Fest. They used to call it the the Oscars of web series. And that was legit. Like it was in Universal Studios in Hollywood. You know, that's where the awards session was on. And I went over because I wanted to go on my holidays. That's been straight up. I wanted to go to the theme park and I wanted to see what LA was like. I'd never really been there before, bar a day trip that I did when I was in San Diego for another film I'd done years ago. And I ended up winning one of the awards. I ended up winning Best Actor in a comedy series for playing Gar. And I remember just being in this room in Hollywood in the Hilton Hotel in Universal Studios and just going, this is mental. I gave this mental speech because I had no idea that I was going to win. I didn't bring my girlfriend at the time even over from Dublin because I never thought I was winning. I ended up bringing my buddy's wife and her friend. They were 2 like 50-year-old women as my dates for the laugh. And, just trying to make a laugh at it because I was like, there's no way I'm winning this. And then I won the award and gave some mad speech about how Irish people built America, but now we weren't even allowed in. We had to go through a big V because I think I was bitter about the visa. I think I was bitter about the visa process or something at the time. And, you know, it was just mad. Like, but I remember just going home going, okay, maybe there's something in this. You know, if the Americans are catching on to it, maybe there's something in this guy, in Gar, if nothing else, you know. And I ended up getting sponsored by a local business here in Waterford, Jerry Kennedy Crash Repairs. He kind of sponsored me to make another episode with a bigger budget to see how it would work. And I was talking to some different TV stations and stuff about making a pilot for TV. And they were kind of going, I don't know how well it'll travel or whether it will travel or whether it will have legs. And I went, well, I'll make an episode over in New York and I'll show you that it'll travel. Because I was based in New York for, Jesus, the bones at nearly 10 years. And I went to school over there and stuff. So I ended up making an episode over in New York with a very, look, listen, there wasn't a huge budget, but there was more than I had before because the web series was made with one of them old DV cameras that used to put tapes into, and one lav mic. So the second one, we had a bit of budget. I had an experienced few guys on crew and some comedy friends of mine from New York, and made this episode. And it really kind of started for me career-wise. It started, yes, that is a black accent. It really started taking off from there. I started getting I got cast in my first movie as the lead role. From there, someone saw me play Gar, and I remember him commenting, you know, we need someone in this script who's able to play an asshole for 60 minutes and then make us care about it. And he's the only person I've seen in Ireland do it. So I ended up getting that movie because of that. And then again, it started getting optioned as a TV series from different production companies and channels, and it kept falling through. And then I was going to make it a movie, and this big production company in Ireland came on board, and again the finance fell through from Screen Ireland. Then it didn't get financed, and it was just the frustration was just, I think it was around 2018, the frustration just got to me, and I was like, I just don't know what I'm going to do from here, you know.
You must be fair proud of pulling it all together now and having this and the whole build up to it and having a premiere up in Dublin as well. Like, it's unbelievable to take it from the germ of an idea of a web series back in the day to what it is now and what it's going to be. I think it's debuting on the 6th of October.
6th of October in cinemas nationwide. But like the other thing, and I've actually never told this story before, but I'll tell you because it's a hurling podcast and not necessarily film-wise. But like, a buddy of mine used to work for the Wayans Brothers, you know, who did Scary Movie and White Chicks and all that stuff, right? So a buddy of mine from New York used to work for them in LA. And I happened to be out there again, taking some meetings, as we say in the biz, which is bullshit talk for getting disappointed by fellas in America. And I went over there taking meetings. And one of them was in the Wayans Brothers office on the Universal lot with my buddy Jesse Murphy, who used to work for Marlon Wayans. And the Wayans Brothers weren't there, but Jesse was there, and I got to see like the office and stuff. It was cool. But what he said to me was, I've showed it to the lads, which is even hilarious. Showed it to the lads, and they love Gar and they love the idea. And they were interested in taking it on as a series idea, but the idea was going to be different. Like Gar would be the bad guy, and it would be about a basketball player from LA coming to Ireland and playing hurling. I thought, geez, that's a brilliant idea. But if I do it, I'll lose. It's not mine anymore. Gar won't be mine. And if they just decide to keep it in a drawer forever, that's the end of it. And I just remember I had just signed up my agent over here at the time. And I remember telling her this, and she just said, if these guys think it's a good idea, it's a good idea. You can take a paycheck up front for it now, or you can back yourself and maybe, and I think tonight the maybe finally comes to fruition.
That's gas. That's gas. That's gas. What it could have been, but you kind of had do you know what it reminds me a bit of? It reminds me a bit of Sly Stallone at Rocky, actually. He was kind of, the idea was like people wanted to buy the idea or whatever off him, but he couldn't be the lead actor or whatever, and he kind of backed himself. Look what that turned into. Who knows what the hurler might turn into?
Yeah, look, for me, the achievement is tonight walking a red carpet with Elva, with John Kenny, with the lads, just celebrating the achievement. And then obviously the massive achievement is next Friday when it's released in cinemas nationwide. That to me is the achievement. Anything beyond this is a bonus,
Sorry, I thought Shane was going to come in there. Give me some of your hurling background, apart from being related to the Godfather and Aaron's Own. Like, where did the passion to put like hurling into a film come from?
So, like, I've always loved watching hurling. I genuinely think it's the greatest sport in the world, and this is coming from someone who was a Blues season ticket holder here in Waterford and a Liverpool FC season ticket holder over in Anfield. Like, I genuinely still think hurling is the greatest sport in the world. I've always thought so. I sold cars to pay to go to film school. When I left De La Salle College here in Waterford, and by the way, De La Salle College is a great hurling school as well, Harty Cup and all that kind of stuff. I sold cars, and I ended up working with a lot of the Waterford hurlers, whether it be through car sales itself or through finance reps and stuff like that. Like, so I knew Micheál White very well. Micheál worked with me, and Dave Bennett was a rep at the time, and David being in and out. Henry Shefflin was a rep at the time, and Henry being in and out. Like, so I knew the lads, and I'd see the lads doing ads in the cinema. Like, Henry was in an ad in the cinema one time when I went, and then the next day I saw him in work, and I was going like, if this was any other country in the world, these lads would be living in mansions with swimming pools, and why aren't they? Yeah, I still to this day can't understand how these unbelievable athletes, world-class athletes, aren't multimillionaires. I just don't understand. And that was the germ of the idea for me. I was like, what if one of these lads wasn't necessarily as sound as they were? What if they allowed their ego to absolutely run away with themselves and was on the cover of magazines and was dressing himself in the top fashion labels and was going out with one of the top models and was walking red carpets? And what if this was his thing, but then he had to go to work the next day as well? How would an ego handle that? And I thought, as a comedic idea, that was, a premium comedic idea, to be honest with you.
And like, putting together the cast, how did that happen? Or is it something where you approached them, or someone else involved with the movie did? What happened?
It was kind of a team effort, really. I knew a lot of the lads, whether it be through comedy or whatever. And then my agent is Nickey Brennan at LBM. She was wonderful as well, because whoever I didn't know or didn't have access to, Lorraine did and approached on my behalf. Like, in fairness to her, like, she's a wonderful agent. She's a very busy person. But I remember showing her the script when I originally wrote it in 2018. And she's been behind it ever since, in fairness to her. Never kind of dissuaded me from doing it. Never said this will never happen. But just constantly kind of supported and lended a bit of a hand. And again, like, she was the one who got John on board, and John got Marty on board. And, it really was a team effort.
It's a bit of a GA job, like in many ways. Like there's a lot probably like that's the GA. People calling in favours and bringing someone along, and all of a sudden, all these names end up in a film together about hurling.
Yeah, that's it. Like it's a grassroots film, really. You know, the people of Waterford wanted to see a film made in Waterford because I think a lot of us are sick of being passed over down here. You know, whether it be for funding for the arts or funding for infrastructure or anything. You know, we honestly we're really sick of that. Like, I don't know if people know this or not. Like, but the cath lab here in Waterford Hospital closes at 5:30 in the day. So if you have a heart attack here in Waterford, you have to get an ambulance to Cork Hospital. So like there's a lot of discontent about stuff in Waterford. So when I think the community down here found out that I was making this movie and I was making it and insisting on making it here, everyone got behind it. So local businesses, just the people of Waterford, hotels, restaurants, you name it, all got behind it. And it was kind of the same with the cast. When they kind of, like, I cast a lot of people who I'd worked with before or I wanted to work with that I was friends with because I wanted that to be the feel of the whole thing anyway. And then I think once the bigger names like John and, you know, other people found out, John Kenny, like David McSavage, Carl Spain, even Mario Rosenstock, you know, once they found out the journey it took to get here. And I guess they liked the script as well. They all wanted to do whatever they could to help and did. You know,
let's call a spade though. Is this film about Milan if he lost the run of himself?
Jesus, no. Like I've never seen Milan. I've never seen Milan dress himself. So like, it couldn't possibly be about Milan. Like Milan comes in with a pair of jeans and a top on him. Gar wouldn't be caught dead in something like that. You know what I mean? And by the way, I'm just reading the comments here. It's like hearing John Milan's voice in someone else's body. John Milan has a way more high-pitched voice than I do. I have a baritone voice. Milan is up here, like, you know what I mean?
And like, where do you see it going from here? And I know it's only just premiering tonight and it's going to go out to the country in a couple of weeks. But like, is this one of those things where you're like, okay, I've the film done and that's that topic exhausted? Or are you like, we can do another one or I can do it on another sport? Or what are you thinking?
I've been playing Gar for 10 years now, you know, or nearly 11 years. In the web series, it was a play. I've actually done him for some sporting websites and stuff. I've played him as a real person, you know, like Sacha Baron Cohen does. I've done that. So he's really an alter ego. So I don't see this as the end of Gar once it comes out next Friday. I think it's kind of only the beginning of the next phase of this character. Like I've always described him as my Alan Partridge, if you like. So, you know, I think maybe, you know, I'd love to do a TV series after this, maybe if we could make that happen. So, you know, we'll see.
Brilliant. And what sort of where's the after party tonight? I can't make the premiere now. Elva did offer me tickets, but I've training tonight. Where's the after party?
What I love about that is like you made sure to let everyone know that you're important enough to be and that we are not important enough for you to miss training for. I love that.
That's a good GA, man.
Oh, listen, I know exactly what's going on here. Don't worry about that. But it's look, we're having the premiere tonight in the Odeon at Point Square, and we will be going to some bar, I'm sure, around there as the after party afterwards.
Top secret. Michael, that now?
Well, not top secret really, but just like, you know, there's a couple of, I'm sure, like judging by the comments, that there's a few people here who are less than desirable, and we probably don't want them rocking up.
Including me and Shane, to be honest with you. Sean O'Sullivan, who's down from your neck of the woods, said be more Dan style than Milan's. Yeah, Big Dan now would be a good man for. It's kind of I'd say there's a mix of a couple of different people thrown together here, to be honest with you.
Well, look, there's no secret. I mean, look, you have to take your influence from somewhere. You have to realize that I came up with the character, I think, in 2011, you know, so he's probably not based on anyone who's around nowadays, you know. And like, as I said to you, like, I grew up here. I saw Harty Cup players get influence in school when we were only 16 or 17. I saw inter-county hurlers get influence in nightclubs, you know, when I saw inter-county hurlers get influence in workplaces, and I'll be honest with you, I loved it. I loved the whole, you what would you call it? Just the world of it all. And I suppose a bit of me kind of always wished I was in the world. You know what I mean? So I had to make it up myself to be involved. You know.
Well, look, brilliant stuff. Do you have anything else to ask, Michael?
No, all good, Tony. Looking forward to seeing it now. To be honest with you, the trailer that I saw, which we'll put up on our X stream, was fairly X-rated now. To be honest with you, so it definitely.
Well, there's a PG. There's a PG. Well, I wouldn't say X-rated because that insinuates sexual intercourse and stuff like that. There's nothing that. There's a few F words in it, Michael. You need to calm down. That's all it is, like. But we have a more family-friendly trailer now, which you should have as well. There's a cinematic trailer now as well. I have to say, actually, that X-rated trailer only got rated 15s for the cinemas. So, you know, it's only a 15s trailer, Michael. Calm down.
Well, now, the only thing I'll say, Tony, is I was just trying to make sure some people want to see certain things in films. I was just leaving it open-ended. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they definitely won't be seeing anything like me with me top off or anything like that. Shorts is the most you're going to get, unfortunately.
Well, look, really best of luck with it, Tony, and I hope the premiere goes great tonight. And
thanks a bit. Listen, lads, I really appreciate you having me. Like, I really do. It's next Friday. It's out in the cinemas nationwide, Friday the 6th of October. And I'm just before we go, I'm reading the comments here when I can, like, and I'm seeing someone saying what hurlers are good actors. And you'll see yourself, like Marty Morrissey's not a hurler, but he's absolutely brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant as an actor, and I mean that. And John Milan puts in a brilliant performance as well. So there's two, at least GAA personalities who are great actors. P-Well74.
Yeah. So look, brilliant stuff. Tony, thanks very much for joining us.
Lads, thanks a million.
Cheers, Tony. Best of luck.
Okay, great to have Tony on there. Joe, actually, while we're talking about him and Waterford and all that kind of stuff, it's probably a good time to mention the fact that Osta Gleeson has taken a year out from the Waterford panel. What do you make of it?
I don't know. I suppose he's 10 years at it. He's had plenty of ups and downs. He probably, the start of his, inter-county career, he was hurler of the year and young hurler of the year in his third year as an inter-county player. That brings a fair amount of pressure with it as well. I kind of sensed definitely last year, by a fella's body language, you're not really sure how much he's enjoying it. I don't know how much he was enjoying it really. He's going to be a massive loss to the game in 2024 and potentially beyond that, Shane, because you just don't know. Stephen O'Keefe stepped out, a week or two after the 2020 All-Ireland final, and we never saw him play with Waterford again, and we're not probably going to see him play with Waterford again. So that is definitely a worry from Waterford people's point of view, and even from anyone that follows hurling, because Gleeson is his own kind of highlight reel, isn't he? Like, look at the things he's done down through the years. It is fellas like, and I know he can frustrate fellas at times as well, because maybe that consistency that people want is not there, but you pay to see, his goal against Cork in 2014. You pay to see the flick down on his knees. You pay to see that kind of stuff. The dummy against Cork in the 2017 All-Ireland semi-final and then tipping it into net. That's the sort of stuff that makes people want to come through the turnstile. So he's going to be a great loss to hurling. Hopefully he'll come back re-energized for 2025, but you just don't know when a fella takes a year out at that age. It's not 23 or 24 and he's taking a year out to go traveling or something. Maybe he is going traveling, I don't know, but there'd be a little nagging worry or doubt in the back of my head that we mightn't see him again, but hopefully we will.
Yeah, because I think he'll be tipping 30 by the time he comes back, if he does return for the 2025 season. And you never know, like with some lads, when they take a year out at this age, they'll be like, do you know what, there's more to life than that. Maybe I'm enjoying playing a bit with the club, assuming that he does continue to do that. But he's one of those players that whether you're interviewing him or whether you're watching him, he'll either say stuff or stuff happens on the pitch, because he's not boring whether he's on the pitch or in front of the microphone. And you kind of miss that. And, you look at John Bubbles O'Dwyer, and I spoke with Shane Brophy about this on Tipcast yesterday. Like, John Bubbles O'Dwyer is another person who, when he's in front of the microphone, things happen. I mean, you saw his post-career interview on BBC there not so long ago with Thomas Niblock, and it was very good. And like when he's doing GA Go analysis and all that, he calls it out straight. And on the pitch as well, he was quite creative, just hurling on instinct, not exactly necessarily hurling by numbers or talking by numbers like so many players do in the media. So you sort of miss these, you miss these characters when they're not in the game, because if you ask who have done the silkiest things in hurling or the most instinctive, cool, like just memorable things in hurling the last kind of number of years. Like, what do you think when you think in terms of great scores or great goals or whatever? Like, those two lads would be kind of in the conversation. Austin Gleeson's goal.
Yeah.
Austin
Definitely,
Gleeson's
those
goal.
two would be right up there. And I think, see, it's a tricky one, right? To me, I just think with talents like that, I think you just have to treat them a small bit differently, and you have to give them a bit of rope. I do, because they're different. They're not your robotic standard, maybe inter-county player. That's not to put everyone in one kind of bracket or anything, but I think you need to give certain players like that a bit of leeway. Like, you need to give them a certain bit of leeway when they go out between the white lines, because if you let them do their own thing, they will make magic happen a lot of the times. But more and more, and maybe with the commitment that comes with being an inter-county player now, and all the pressure that comes with that, there's a lot more lads opting out at an early age, I'd say, as well, an earlier age than before, and that's worrying. I hope we see Gleeson again, but as you said there, he'll be 30 for the 2025 season, and like, maybe a year out will re-energize him, or maybe a year out will be like, yeah, I don't really want to do this anymore. So it's kind of a difficult one there, but the game does need players like that. They spark energy into a game like most normal players can't.
Yeah. River Power says now Davey saying he shouldn't have forced Austin to play last year. Some man, I'm sure it's Cahill's fault. You did that too, Davey. Wow, having a fair cut there, River Power. Cassius King is same with Colin Fennelly, taking a year out and never came back. Sean O'Sullivan said, if you were Aussie, why would you do it? If he's the best player on the pitch at 80%, he still gets dogs abuse every match home and away. Also, the refs don't protect him enough. POL 74, potentially the best hurler of his generation, but discipline and no defined position hindered him. There are times when he didn't quite hit the levels that we wanted, and maybe it's us selfishly looking at it and thinking, come on, take over the game here and do something absolutely unbelievable. Because when he did do it, it was such a thrill to watch. There's lads who've been out there hurling for 15 years, and they will never have even close to the highlight reel that this lad would have had over the course of one season. Just 2014 alone, his first year, that goal against Cork, when there's like, if you do a still image at a still frame of one stage of him running in, it looks like there's about 7 Cork lads running after him, like Maradona against Belgium in 1982, if people know the photograph that I'm talking about. And like, I remember one particular part, he was soloing up the wing, and he did that sort of the switch hand pass, but it was a fake, and went past him. And I can't remember if he scored at the end of it. But it was just like, here's a guy hurling on instinct, and you just miss seeing that around the place. Might bring Nickey Brennan, former GA president, all things to all men in Kilkenny as well. Nickey, great to have you on. We're just talking about, it's a shame to see Austin Gleeson stepping away from a year. Obviously, he's absolutely entitled to do so, but there aren't many lads who hurl the way he does. Oh, I think you're on mute there, Nickey.
All sorted now. We're back on track now.
We're good.
Okay, I suppose one of the challenges with a guy like Austin Gleeson is what we would call a free-flowing hurler. He probably is the sort of guy that, an interesting there, a comment from Mike Doyle built up by the media, but I do think that he's the type of guy that plays on instinct and maybe doesn't want to, he's not comfortable conforming to any type of system. And it's gone that way now, very, very conditioned. You do this thing about possession, distributing the ball and all of that. So I'd say that's a little bit something that's probably got the better of him, and he's probably a bit frustrated. Look, he's had a difficult time with the club as well. I mean, Mount Sion haven't been shooting the lights out there. It's been Ballygunner down there. And, maybe there's a bit of that as well. But so it's been a difficult, it's been alternating a back and a forward and all of that sort of stuff. And, there's a person on there now using the whole issue of social media, and it gets players that they're human at the end of the day. And remember, he's a young guy, but he's been around for a long time. So, he just, one of those guys needs to just get away and clear the head of it and hopefully come back, because he's a loss to hurling, because he's an undoubted skillful player and a big loss to Watford.
Michael?
Yeah, well, he's just on one of the comments there. It's mad to say that he's played for Watford for 10 years and we still don't know his best position, or he hasn't played in a position for that long either. He's been centre back, he's been wing back, he's been midfield, he's been full forward, he's been centre forward, he's been wing forward, he's been nearly everywhere bar the full back line and the goals. And we still don't know, and it's still no defined position for him. And that's probably maybe a bit frustrating for him too as well. Maybe he'd like to be playing in a kind of a certain spot. But just to move on to the Kilkenny Championship at the weekend, Nicky, things really heating up ahead of the quarterfinals this weekend. There's maybe been, I don't know if there's ever shadow boxing down in Kilkenny, but there was no real jeopardy until last weekend, and it gets fairly tasty this weekend. Like Ballyhale, Shamrocks and Dixborough this weekend is as tasty as you'll get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose people who've been watching the Kilkenny Championship will know that Shamrocks, not for the first time, ended up down in the second last in the table, which means they were in the relegation. And that's nothing new in Kilkenny. Shamrock have a habit of not over-egging it during the course of the league, getting things right, and then having all guns blazing. Now, they drew Danesfort, who have been having a difficult year, but performing generally okay. But Shamrocks then decided they were going to fly back Colin Fennelly all the way from Dubai, and he was not a big scorer, I think, in the game last Saturday, but very influential. And he was pretty shattered after the game, but got to the airport on Sunday and was back in the office in Dubai for an important meeting on Monday morning. And he'll fly out of Dubai again probably today to be ready for the Dixborough match tomorrow evening. So, on Saturday evening. So that's the life of her. But there's another guy to talk about later on when we come to who even travelled further. Not for that match, of course. There you go now, lads. That's just leave Dubai on a Friday, get to Kilkenny, play a match, go back and be ready in the office for your business meeting on a Monday morning. That's what it's like now.
Is it a bit of is there a bit of desperation with that though, Nicky, as well, that they need him to come back and that they're doing that? They're missing Joey Holden, to Joey Cody. I think one of the Brian Cody's missing as well. There might be
Brian
one
Cody,
more.
Yeah, Brian is in Australia. I'm not sure where Joey is. Joey Cody, Joey Holden is on his travels. This is a case now, if they could start tracking and me up to bring him back down again, I think they'd love to do that. I know they'd love to have Holden back. All sorts of rumours that he might suddenly appear in UPMC Nolan Park on Saturday evening around 3:30 and walk into the Shamrocks dressing room. Look, anything is possible in this day and age. But look, Colin Fennelly was a big help to them last week. I mean, but for a missed penalty from Danesfort, they could have made it trickier for the Shamrocks. But once they got over that missed Danesfort missed goal, Shamrocks kind of took off again, and there was obviously never any doubt at the end who the better team were. But yeah, they need everybody on board, and you know, it's strange to say about the Shamrocks, but they don't actually have a huge amount of reserve talent. And in fact, after playing Danesfort last week, they had to bring on a number of players, and that left them unable to field a team a couple of nights later in the Kilkenny Junior Hurling Championship. They had to give a walkover.
Right, okay. And like another question, is this now the time that surely some of the other teams in Kilkenny, because they see the Shamrocks struggling for numbers and some players not there at the moment, like they have to finally make a push and dethrone them?
Yeah, look, the gap is closing. But then we said the gap was closing between Limerick and the rest last year and the year before, and we saw what happened. Look, I do think that they're playing, the team that's been playing the best club hurling in Kilkenny this year at Dixborough. A young, lively, fast team, and they're doing very, very well. So look at, I do think it's tightening, but when you have a strong half back line with Dara Corcoran, Richie Reid, Evan Shefflin, and a half forward line of maybe TJ Reid, Owen Cody, and Adrian Mullen, that type of strength. Now, when you look at lines like that, you say, God, they'll nothing beat them. But look, the teams are, Dixborough are probably getting them at the right time. If you could ever use that statement and all that. But I mean, the Shamrocks will go into the game as favourites because of who they are. They're able to conjure up scores. Like TJ Reid is still able to pull big scores out of the fire. And at the end, he only got 2 goals against Danesfort last week. They'll be looking for a bit more maybe from Owen Cody. He's played some very good matches. But look, they're playing a good, strong team in Dixborough, well-conditioned Dixborough, well laid out, and a team probably without stars, in the sense that there's probably no person you could say on the Dixborough team is automatically going to walk onto the Kilkenny team in 2024. They probably have to. There may be some of them will come on, but they're not like that. Whereas you could say with the Shamrocks, well, there's 4 or 5 probably already there, and maybe the lads on the fringes are like Dara Corcoran. They're likely to come and make a position for themselves next year. Who's
impressed you for Dixborough this year? Like, who's on form?
They're all playing well. Actually, Killian Buckley has been playing very well. Bill Sheehan in the forwards, strong in defence with Evan Cody, Pádraig Moylan, and there's a couple of the Nolans. Aidan Nolan has been playing well. So I think the thing about Dixborough is that they're a team of maybe not a huge amount of stars, but they're a lot of consistent. And I better give a shout out to my own nephew, Owen Fennelly, who's playing very well at the moment for Dixborough also. He's been consistent over the last couple of years. It started to get a run under Michael Walsh, and he's repaying him big time. So as I said, a very consistent team without stars, and the Gaffneys are always good for a goal or two in the attack as well. So look, they're going to be. There's a question there from Richard Hogan about Brian Butler. Now Brian Butler went off injured against Danesford. We don't know, Richard Hogan is the caller there. Don't know if he's back or not yet, but he would be a loss to them because he's also a big player. And the question about Harry Shine as well. Now, I saw Dixborough playing in the last round of the league against Mullinavat, and while they won the match by 4 points, Mullinavat gave a very decent account of themselves, but kind of ran out of energy at the end. Harry Shine played in that match. But as Joe Butler says on the line there, Timmy Clifford has been probably one of the star players, and interestingly, I believe he's playing in his best position, which is wing back. And I think if you're next year when Kilkenny tug out, I think you will see Clifford playing wing back, because I always felt that was his best position, and going forward as well.
Nicky, just on the Borough, is it time for them now? Is it SH1T or get off the pot for the Borough at this stage? Like they need to put in a big performance and take down Ballyhale at the weekend. Like if they were to take down Ballyhale at the weekend, that could potentially be a changing in the guard. If they don't, Ballyhale could win 6 in a row and potentially win a Leinster title. But like this is the time, is it not?
Well, it's the time for the Borough to beat Shamrocks Ballyhale. By beating Shamrocks Ballyhale, it does no guarantee that it's going to be the Borough's championship. I mean, the other quarterfinals that we'll talk about in a moment, the teams in that, and certainly some of them will feel they're in with a very, very good chance of winning their particular games. But this is a big obstacle. I mean, maybe the Borough would prefer not to be playing the Shamrocks, no question about that. But they are where they are now, and they have to face up to it. And as I said, it might not be the worst time to be playing the Shamrocks. They still have to get a number of things right. But when the Shamrocks get into Nolan Park, and interestingly, 2 of the quarterfinals are played in UPMC Nolan Park on Sunday. Saturday is taken over with minor finals, while the other 2 games are at country venues. So it's interesting that Shamrocks are in UPMC Nolan Park, a game that's actually live on TG Cahir, and they obviously have always excelled when they get into the park.
And I'm just noticing here from the way the quarterfinals have worked out, Mullinavat against the Loughlin Gales, James Stephens against Greg Ballycallan, and like we've been talking about there, Dixborough against Shamrocks Ballyhale. You could be looking at 3 of the big city teams in the semi-finals. The other quarterfinal there is Glenmore against Venice Bridge. But, you know, the city haven't won it since Dixborough back in, was it 2018, 2017?
18, yeah.
2017, actually. Like, the city needs to strike back.
And there's no surprise that the city teams are dominating. I mean, they have been dominant at underage for a long number of years. So there's no great surprise there. And look at all of the reason that city teams have not won for those number of years you've mentioned there is one very simple reason. It's called Shamrocks Ballyhale, because they've been an exceptional team. If you take Shamrocks Ballyhale out of the equation, yes, they would certainly have won more. So there's not a lot in it now. That the 3 city teams, I think will have a big say in it, and we'll be coming on to the games the other 2 city teams are playing. There's a reasonable chance that you could see 3 city teams in the semi-final.
Nicky, just on James Stephens, it's James Stephens and Greg Ballycallan. That's the curtain raiser on Sunday. Is like Brian Cody is like the man who can't be moved. Like he goes from Kilkenny, been there for 23 or 24 seasons. He's involved as a selector last year. He's manager this year. How are they motoring under him, and does he look as energetic as ever on the line?
The shadow of Brian Cody was always in a large field on the Kings Road at the James Stephens Club. He was never that far away, even when he was walking the sidelines of Croke Park or Semple Stadium or Nolan Park. I'll be absolutely clear about that. He's gone back in. He's had a great reception from the players in there. They absolutely think the world of him inside, and they're getting on very well. Now, they took a big blow against the Loughlin Gales last weekend in the League and Shield final. The 2 League and Shield finals were on last week. But let's not get carried away with those. They're games that are not taking me over seriously. If there's any sort of niggly injuries, players are pulled from it. But there is talk that Cian Kenny might not be available for the game at the weekend against Greg Ballycallan. And Greg Ballycallan, they played James Stephens in the first game. Now, we actually covered that match, and James Stephens won the game, but there wasn't a lot in it. Now, Ballycallan are coached by Eugene Cloonan from Galway this year. Again, he was gone last year, but he's back again this year. And they made a conscious decision at the start of the year to play a number of young players. like Jeff Neary, still in Kieran's College, Arden McAvoy, Brian's son, young Corcoran as well, and Billy O'Neill, Ryan Corcoran and Billy O'Neill. Both of those latter two played with Kilkenny CBS last year. Now they have been a revelation in terms of the way they performed this year, and they're missing one of the Eagans who's in Australia as well. So they've done brilliantly to get to this stage. Now, this has been the best that Ballycallan have done. And maybe at last Eugene Cloonan is atoning for the scores he got against them when he played against them in the All-Ireland Club final many years ago, depriving them of winning an All-Ireland. This is his chance to pay back the club for the pain he inflicted on them. Well, he's doing a great job there. He is James Royal and Richard Hogan makes a very good point on this. I mean, while Brian McAvoy is not directly involved with James Stevens, as far as I know, and son Aaron will be for Greg Ballycallan on the other side. Tracy Millay will be his mum. So look, it is an issue. Again, Richard Hogan, I think I know who that is. He has made a very good point there. Any worry about the pitch in Thomason given the weather last weekend? I think that's a very fair point. I covered a matter last day in hurricane-like conditions between Dunnamaggin and Young Ireland's of Gordon in the intermediate, and I think the pitch will it'll be a test for the players down there. It will not have the free-flowing hurling that you might have in UPMC and Nolan Park. I still think James Stevens will be experienced enough to get home Greg Ballycallan, but Greg Ballycallan have certainly been one of the success stories of the Kilkenny Senior Championship this year, and Billy Ryan is hurling out of his skin, playing ironically at midfield.
Hey, UPMC must be giving you a few quid, Nicky, are they?
Not a problem. I shook David Brennan's hand last Saturday. I was at an event, all right. So those of us in Kenny are conditioned to appreciate those that put their hand in their pockets and help any aspect of the association. But I have to say, we've seen nothing coming from him yet, myself or radio now. But you know what? You're after prompting me to do something about it.
No, I tell you what, I'd be the same. I wouldn't mention sponsors in any other grounds, but Borough are sponsored by Brendan's Park is Grand Heat in St. Brendan's Park now, and I'd always say Glenisco, O'Connor Park. I'd look after my own local ones. I wouldn't be too worried about the other ones. But something else you mentioned there. Something else you mentioned there about Eugene Cloonan, that great story when they played Greg Ballycallan in the All-Ireland Club final, and I forget who he was marking, but they went out for a ball around the sideline together. It was near the end of the game. They collided, both lost their hurls. Cloonan picked up the closest hurl to him, put the ball over the bar, realised it was his opponent's hurl, handed it back to him. Like that is as sick an incident as will happen in a game, to score a point with your opponent's hurl and then hand it back to him.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know what you do with that hurley. If you're a Greg Ballycallan person, would you burn it or would you frame it as having scored in a hurting point?
Nicky, like the weather at the moment, we've seen some games played in treacherous conditions. Anyone who was watching TG Carr last Sunday would have seen Clonlara against Dennis, and the water was flying up off the pitch. I'm looking at the weather for Saturday, 18 degrees, which is fine, but it looks to be a fair chance of rain. I'm seeing wind up as far as 32 kilometers an hour. That may or may not happen. What do you make of these games that are played in the muck and the SH1T? Do you like the battle of, the war of attrition, or are you like, oh, it's a shame in a way to play?
No, it's awful shame. I mean, I can only look at Kilkenny because I haven't studied the other counties. The Kilkenny senior and intermediate championships commenced on the 5th of August. Now, a number of teams today, 7 weeks later, are finished. They're gone, done and dusted. Those who played this weekend, and lost, you'd have to feel for them. As I said, that intermediate game I was at, the score was 1-4 to 6 points at the end of the game. Now, it was a competitive game, but to be honest about it, and the players couldn't be faulted for the effort, but the conditions were appalling with wind and rain. It was impossible to hurl in those conditions. And the only, I suppose, smart move of the game happened in every time Dunnamaggin got the goal. It's going to be difficult. It is. People's whole championships now are dependent on it. But the weather is one thing, and the other issue is the close proximity of all the games. And all of these teams have been playing almost week in and week. Only been a spare week here and there. But the bottom line is if any player is injured, there's no chance of coming back. Airdens now are in the relegation final next weekend against Saints Ford. Conor Fogarty is very unlikely to make it. He played against Mullinavat in the first round last weekend and had to leave the field. So he won't make it, and he'll be gone, and he's their main man. Richie Hogan struggled with injury with Dale Sport for a few matches. He came off last week against Shamrocks. will he be okay to play in the relegation final against Erin's Own? There's no recovery time now for players if they get injured with such a condensed season. So, this was all to help the club player, and it has helped to a degree, but it does really discommode clubs when other games are in such tight proximity. And secondly, when you have this biblical type rain and wind, that it is very difficult to hurry in it. And of course, it does impact pitches, because not every field is the club are able to put the sort of funds into upgrading their field and maintaining their field that, for example, county boards can do. It is a costly exercise to keep your field maintained with sanding and irrigating it and all the various things that has to happen to make sure it's in top condition. And anyway, some of the fields are in locations that are simply wet because they're close to river streams or whatever it might be. It's a tough one this time of the year to have to play in the most important matches of the year. The club in such conditions.
Do you like Kilkenny? Like you'd have to say though, they do have a very long championship, 2 groups of 6, so 5 games each. Then there's that sort of league and shield finals, of course, and other games are like first round / relegation. There's no concern about football because that was played back in March, I think maybe April or whatever. So like Kilkenny probably could do their business a little bit quicker so that the games were spread out and players had more time, so that they didn't have to play week on week on week. So if a guy had an injury, maybe he has 2 weeks rather than 1.
Well, not really, Shane, because, call it cocky if you like, but there is a number of counties that will make the assumption that we're going to reach the All-Ireland final, and therefore the commencement of our championships, the league stages you thought, and bear in mind for people listening to us, where you finish in the Kilkenny League determines where you commence in the championship. So those are important. During the inter-county season, there are secondary competitions in Kilkenny, but they are taking, there's lip service paid to those. The games are played, but the composition of teams, there's not a lot of thought given. It's whoever is available. And quite honestly, coming up to the commencement of that league championship style, you will find clubs probably away to counties to get challenge matches against the top hurling teams there. So it's not going to change. It's all what's happening now in the period of 6, 7, 8 weeks was happening over longer periods of time, where Kilkenny were playing maybe 3 matches during the course of the inter-county league championship. Brian Cody was very happy to let players back to their clubs for a week and to get ready for their club game, and that panned out. You even have a scenario now where some clubs did not have all their players back from America because they're still on J1s. For example, the final on the west coast of America was played on the same weekend on the 5th of August, I think it was, even though it could have been finished probably a week or 2 earlier so that those players could come back. So there is going to be a bit of a backlash about that, getting players back from J1s to play for the start of the championships as well. And then you have counties like Carlow and Wexford who played off their championships much earlier because, in fairness to them, they have football commitments to their clubs as well. So it's very tight. It's very tight the way it's there now. It's not going to change, and we're hearing that players seem to think it's better than the old system, and that's it.
Yeah, Shane Ryan, even Kerry goalkeeper, was the latest one this week after Davy Byrne of Dublin last week, talking about how it's much better for us. But we are seeing a chorus of people in the media this week talking about how it really isn't working, that the split season is a failure, and we're missing promotion and all that kind of stuff. Where do you stand on that now, Nicky?
Well, look, I think that, of course, we're missing promotion. Okay, guys, and in fairness, we're picking up on the club scene now, and you're getting. I feel for your colleagues in the media as well, who we know from meeting them Sunday after Sunday. They're having to dig low and find a story here and there to keep their sports editor happy. And a lot of the club scene is principally of interest to the local county. There is a certain element of it that goes beyond that, particularly when you come to the latter stages. But look, we are just missing out on a promotion. Obviously what's happening out in France in relation to the World Cup and other international activities, the Premiership is on board and all of that. Of course, that's clear spotlight. Pick up any newspaper and just count the column inches that are being devoted to other sports. So games is not getting that much. And I feel for people, particularly Michael, who's writing a column most days, he has to come up with a new story, and and dig up somebody somewhere who has more to tell. You'll get days like today where, of course, there's a write-up about the All-Star nominations and who's in and who's out and all that. That'll get a couple of 100 words easy enough. But it's tough going now within the media to try and find that, and it is one of the prices that we pay. But look, for some players, I can see this working out. If you're a player who simply is happy to come back in to your club at the beginning of August, play 6 or 9 weeks, fair enough, but you haven't seen your colleagues in the club for the previous 7 months. That's the way the inter-county scene has gone now, and it ain't going to change, I'm afraid. But I do think there's quite a few negatives about it as far as I'm concerned anyway.
Michael, the club game has gone too serious according to 36 and counting. Would you agree?
The club game has gone too serious. Definitely a lot more serious than it was anyway. But we had this debate a couple of weeks ago about commitment and whatever. I think lads train an awful lot more now, and they're in the gym an awful lot more. Whether they're actually more committed than lads were 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, I'm not so sure, because I think they'd miss things. Some people would miss things at the drop of a hat, or miss the championship game at the drop of a hat, which boggles my mind, to be honest with you. But Nicky, just to look at the other quarterfinals in Kilkenny, Mulnavat and O'Loughlin's. I think Mulnavat beat them at this stage last year. Am I right in saying?
Yeah.
So they'll be ready for an ambush, I'd say.
Well, look, a tricky obstacle. I've seen Mulnavat play 2 games recently. They played against Sixburn, that I alluded to earlier. They lost by 4 points, so 2 points being taken time. And I just felt maybe Dixon were just taking a bit too much out of the ball. But very good, I thought, Mulnavat. I was at the next match where they played Clara, and that was the final game. And I thought they were awful. And I just was disappointed with them that day. Clara looked a lot better. Now we have a scenario where Clara got bet last weekend and Mulnavat won. And that's just the way life goes in this competition. I still think it's O'Loughlin Gales to lose. I think they're having strong defenders there in Mickey Butler, Hugh Lawler, and Paddy Deegan. Now they might push up Deegan and put somebody else in there, but if they had the 3 them in defence, they're 3 inter-county players that will marshal the best of sides, and they're getting a good bit out of some of the. Owen Wall was very good again. He was involved with Waterford FC in soccer, but he's a very good forward, very easy. Now, I said the one that could go against O'Loughlin's is the softness of the field in Thomastown. That game, by the way, has been pushed back from 1/2 to 3:30 because of a bereavement down in Mulnavat. But I'd still expect O'Loughlin Gales to win that one. But the conditions, I think, they might level it up a bit. Mulnavat are physically a big, strong team. And, Mick Malone is still very good. He's the Kilkenny football captain. And a number of colleagues there, Liam Fennelly, son of Liam Fennelly, Willie Dwyer still playing very well, and John Walsh, who actually missed their earlier match because he was actually playing in that final in San Francisco. He's been playing very well for them lately and is a solid player. So, look, O'Loughlin's won't take them for granted at all, and there's no reason they should. History will show that Mulnavat have always performed well against O'Loughlin Gales. But I do think Brian Hogan has them in good shape here, and I think they'll make the last 4.
Based on, I watched Venice Bridge playing last weekend, and, I was very impressed with how they dug that out in those conditions. David Blanchfield, I thought he was very good against Tullaroan. He got on an awful lot of ball. A couple of the key Tullaroan men, I felt, just didn't get into the game quite enough. But Liam Blanchfield then, whether you call it 3 goals or 4, it's hard to know who it came off when it deflected into the net. I mean, he's going to have serious confidence going into this game against Glenmore.
Liam Blanchfield he scored 4 goals and 2 points last weekend. He's a guy that has just arrived back from Australia, by the way, and he's the other guy I was talking about. He's come back from Australia. As soon as he's involved in the with Venice Bridge finishes, he heads back to Australia. So another long journey. And by the way, Airdon's owner, Comer, are going to have to consider getting back Kieran Wallace from Australia also. He's gone out there as well. He's played with Aussie rules football out there at a lower level to keep himself going. So hurling, but also playing a bit of Aussie rules. So he might be back as well. But Liam Blanchfield was the longest returnee in terms of the championship. But when you score 4-2, there's a reason why you're brought back. Yeah, Venice Bridge against Glenmore. Now, Glenmore would have beaten Venice Bridge a couple of weeks ago, the league stages of it, but it will be much tighter. Venice Bridge have Partridge, they have Jason Clear back, they have Kieran Brennan back, and David Blanchfield now, fresh from his All-Star nomination, is a big man in defence now for Venice Bridge, and will be for Kilkenny going forward next year also. I could see Venice Bridge with that, although Glenmore are actually playing very, very well, it must be said. Owen Murphy playing very well for them at centre half back, as is Alan, his brother, at centre forward, who I think you're going to see a lot more of in the Kilkenny colours next year.
Actually, do you know a question that came up on Tipcast yesterday, and I'm looking at it now. Some of the teams that have gone from intermediate up to senior in Tipperary have done quite well, and I think Mike Carkey and Ross Gray off the top of my head. And I'm looking here, Glenmore, they came up from intermediate a couple of years ago, so did Tullaroan, who were obviously knocked out last week. Does that kind of speak to the, how well that they've kind of stratified the Kilkenny Championship, or just that there's not that much of a difference between intermediate and maybe the bottom half of senior in the likes of these counties?
That was the case. It's not the case anymore. Now, Thomastown will be favourites to win the intermediate, but then they were favourites for the last 2 and maybe 3 years. I think they might get up this year, but there's a huge nervousness in Thomastown about it they're almost afraid to talk about it. And maybe it's one of the difficulties they have. Now, they play Donegal in the semi-final intermediate next week. Right now, I think they're the only team in intermediate who probably could make some go of playing senior level. I don't think any of the other intermediate teams. It's just the way it is at the moment, Shane. But you're right, Glenmore and Tyrone were strong teams, but Tyrone have been fading badly in the last couple of matches, and I think it wasn't a huge shock that they got beaten by Venice Bridge last weekend. They seem to have just gone a bit flat in recent games, and that was the way it was last weekend too.
Nickey, who wins the Kilkenny Senior Hurling Championship?
And you're asking me, and it's only at the quarterfinal stages. Very, very deep, very deep. If you may ask me next, but if you just put the gun to my head, who can win the Kilkenny Championship? I'm just going to take a punt and just purely out of the dark, and I'm just going to say Venice Bridge.
Venice Bridge. That was probably one of the last teams I expected you to say.
All right. Gosh, I've been known to be stupidly wrong before, but I haven't thought about it in that context. We just work from week to week here because we don't know what way the wind and rain and the sun might shine. But I think Venice Bridge could take a bit of beating. I think they have big, strong players, and they have in their backroom team one Dan Shanahan as well. Bear in mind, who gives he's able to get the best out of the guys as well, along with his other mentors and that.
Shano, I'm going to call O'Loughlin Gales. Who are you calling?
I'm going to go with Dixborough.
So the three lads here, not one of us has gone for the reigning, defending, undefeated All-Ireland champions.
And you know what, Michael? I know that, but look, in many respects, nothing surprised me about the Shamrocks. I mean, they could easily win this Kilkenny Championship. Of course they could. But I suppose we're at the stage where we feel that, look, maybe we're taking a punt on somebody else for a change. We think maybe the gap is closing a bit, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they're still to win the Kilkenny Senior Hurling Championship. They're just a great club, great set of players. They have great plans for further development down there. Everything about the Shamrocks is just incredible. But I just feel there's an opportunity here now for some of the rest, and I'm simply going. My wild card is Venice Bridge.
Do you know, this weekend, just before we let you go, Nickey, there's the GA Special Congress at Croke Park, and 11 motions are going to be debated and voted on by delegates at Croke Park. And I'm just wondering, is there anything, I don't know how much focus you've put on it, but is there any motion in particular that's standing out to you? Obviously, there's the preliminary quarter-final talk of the Joe McDonough teams. There's also a vote on achieving and maintaining a gender balance in the membership of the Cushta Banish D at a minimum of 40% female or male representation. Is there anything that's sticking out to you?
Well, look, I haven't given it much attention because my attention on Saturday will be at the Kilkenny Minor A and B hurling finals in UPMC Nolan Park. So I'm giving a Congress a skip for probably the first time in, 20, 30 years anyway. I do think that the whole gender quota thing, which has been driven by the government, I think is probably going to get through. Now, it's rather ironic that the governments are putting so much pressure on governing bodies of sport to come up with a 40% representation, when our own government, and any government, has never come up with a 40% representation of women, either in political parties or in government. So it is rather ironic that the state should be placing these demands on governing bodies of sport, and I include all governing bodies there, not just the GA. But the GA have come up with a mechanism of how it's going to achieve that over a reasonably short period of time, and I've no great issue with that at all, to tell you the truth.
But Nickey, surely, we can have equality of opportunity so that anyone can get to these roles, but we can't guarantee equality of outcome. As far as I'm concerned, if it ended up being 90% female representation on the board, I wouldn't have an issue so long as they're the best people for the job. So we could end up saying, okay, we're going to have 40% of one gender, they're in there and they are the best of those, and we're going to shoehorn a few other people in from another gender who aren't so good, but sure, look, we have to tick the box. And people would say, oh, that's such a far right way to look at it. It's not. It's just, I'd like to see the best people in there, and I don't care if it's 100% female.
I think, okay, and I know there'll probably plenty of people would probably that view you have, but I argue though that maybe females have felt that they were not welcome in the GA and those type of positions. Maybe they had no chance of getting them. I do believe there are plenty of very capable women to take on some top positions on GA Management Committee, Central Council, or where it might be. I have no great fears on that. All I would say is any people who into those positions have to be prepared to take responsibility for the decisions they will bring forward and the decisions that they will be making. So everybody, be it male or female, must stand up and defend those decisions and explain the rationale behind it. So I'm not particularly pushed whether it's 40, 50 or 60% either female representation. I'd say that much. But I do think that if you had this stipulation, I think it would be impossible for women to get that amount of our representation on these governing bodies of sport. So I don't really have any particular issue with that, to be quite frank about it. But everybody has to be equal at that level. So you share the good days, but you also share any difficulties that are there. You have to be prepared to stand up and be to defend what you do as well. So everybody has to be treated equal when it comes to that. As regards the couple of other motions, now I didn't really read to them all, but I do expect that, notwithstanding that the likes of Carol and Antrim would like to see it happening, I don't think there's any justification for the Joe McDonagh finalists to be in the McCarthy Cup quarterfinals. I believe myself that their day of glory for the winner in particular obviously should be winning the Joe McDonagh, walking up the steps of Croke Park and celebrating that as the high point of the year. Don't go out a week or two later and then get a bit of a trimming in the All-Ireland quarter-final. I think it does nothing for a county, and I think we just have to... The benefit is you get into the McCarthy Cup competition the following year, and that's your bonus. So it also gives another week there, which the J has to play around it, because quite frankly, we talked for a long time today about the tightness of club competitions and how they run over a short period of time. Well, ditto the inter-county scene.
Absolutely. Anything else, Michael, you want to ask Nikki before we finish up?
No, just on the point you were making there, I think as regards gender balance or percentage or something like that, I think it's just, to me, it's just best person for the job. Best person for the job gets it. Do you know what I mean? Whether that's male, female, it's the best. That's for any job or any post or any.
Yeah, but I think,
like
Michael, the difficulty there. Yeah, but the difficulty there is that will not give you the sort of gender balance that I think most organisations would feel is fair. Now, clearly, the people who are going to come forward to make up the 40% that the GA has engaged for, they have to be people who are going to take on responsibility. They're going to have to be people who will be asked to chair some central committees, and they'll be given very significant roles in the association, and they must stand up and be counted. So anybody who has aspirations to come as part of that, yes, they have. There's no reason why they can't think of themselves as potentially future GA presidents, but they must be prepared to step up and take on responsibility as well. Because when you get up to that level in the GA, there is responsibility on your shoulders. You might be part of a large volunteer organisation, but the decisions that you make and how you conduct your business is very important in the whole lives of people around the country in terms of their primary sport, which is the GA. And people might like me saying this, but while it's a great sporting organisation, it also has to be run in a very efficient manner as a business as well, because if you don't do that, it'll all crumble around you.
Look, brilliant stuff as ever, Nikki. Really appreciate you joining us.
You're welcome, guys, and we'll talk again sometime soon.
Cheers, Nikki. Good man.
Okay, always great to have Nikki there. I'll just read out a couple of the other motions that are coming through. So he's already talked about the motion that proposes to abolish the Liam McCarthy Cup All-Ireland preliminary quarterfinals. And so they'd no longer play in that, obviously. And then their motion 2 is actually, this is if motion 1, which I've just mentioned, passes. So this would introduce a semi-final into the Joe McDonagh between the teams that finished second and third, which of course takes even more jeopardy out of it, and you can lose even more games if you're in one of the top teams. So we'll see what happens there. Motion 3 is this concerns the All-Ireland Minor Football Championship. It proposes that after the round-robin provincial championships, counties would compete in tiered knockout competitions. So Tier 1 would see the provincial winners play the provincial runners-up in the All-Ireland quarter-final, with the pairings determined on a provincial rota system initially determined by the Central Council. Motion 4, this concerns the All-Ireland Minor Hurling Championship. Galway and Ulster teams, as agreed by the Ulster and Leinster councils, would compete in the Leinster Minor Championship. The All-Ireland series would see the Munster and Leinster winners advance directly to the All-Ireland semi-finals, where they couldn't meet the team they beat in the provincial finals. The third and fourth place teams in Munster and Leinster would contest the preliminary quarterfinals, with the two Munster teams playing the two Leinster teams. The winners of those matches would advance to the All-Ireland quarterfinals, where they played and beaten Munster and Leinster finalists, with the draw subject to the avoidance of repeat pairings where possible. Will I keep going? Do you want to comment on that?
No, I have to say, does that enthuse you? Like, none of that stuff ever enthuses me. Special Congress, something like that. I think it's hard work now, I have to say. Some people absolutely love it now. Love going down the nitty-gritty. It wouldn't really be for me now, I have to say.
Want to talk about the All-Stars?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we'll fly down through it. I suppose, like, Limerick ended up with 14 nominees and, 3-time All-Star last 3 years and former hurler of the year. Garrod Hegarty is probably one of the most notable omissions, you'd have to say. Him and Declan Hannon are the two from, would say, two Limerick regulars that didn't make it. David Reedy, who started, I think, the last 3 games, made it. Mike Casey is still chasing that All-Star. Basically, he would complete the list of Limerick regulars. The Limerick regular starting 15. He's the only one without an All-Star. The 3 Limerick lads obviously got nominated for Hurler of the Year. Kyle Hayes, Dermot Burns, some effort to be nominated back-to-back again, and a fair chance of winning it, even though I think Aaron Gallan will probably just about tip it, which will mean Patrick Swell will make, like, unprecedented. Yeah, but even like 3 different guys in 3 years in a row would be unbelievable, like, for a club. Like, that's dream scenario, really. Seen a good bit of commentary around the young hurler of the year, which I thought was interesting. So you obviously had Adam Hogan, Mark Rogers, and Kieran Joyce, and obviously a few people from Limerick maybe with their noses out of joint a small bit. Do you think Cathal O'Neill deserved to be nominated for Young Hurler of the Year, even though he played very little? Now, I give the argument that when he played, he was outstanding, and his contributions to the best team in the country maybe might have been more than the other 3 lads, but the other 3 lads were regular starters. What's your kind of opinion on that?
Well, I'm trying to remember, because a little bit of time has passed at this stage. But you look at the All-Ireland final, he came on and he scored a couple of points. Didn't he start the All-Ireland semi-final against Galway?
I think so. I think so.
No, actually, sorry. He came on after 56 minutes and he got himself a point. Like, I'm trying to remember. It's funny, actually. We're just trying to remember off the top of your head which games did these lads all play. And he scored a couple of points in the Munster final. He scored a brilliant goal against Cork. Do you remember that game down in the Gaelic grounds? That was really, really good. And I'm trying to see, he scored 5 points against Tipperary. So that's fairly notable. Earlier on in the season, he scored a couple against Clare. So
what are you looking at here? A tally of about 111, 112 over the course of the games that he played. And like if you were to add up the minutes that he played, you'd probably get the equivalent of a game and a half, maybe 2 games, close to 2 games, maybe all told.
I'd say if you're Cathal O'Neill, you're starting to wonder, what have I done to the GA world that last year I wasn't allowed to play in the All-Ireland Under-20 Championship, and this year I'm not being nominated for Hurler of the Year. Sorry, Young Hurler of the Year. Yeah, I put him in there. I think he should definitely be in there. If you're asking me who else was very harshly done by, I'd say Paddy Doyle can feel quite unlucky. Fair enough, there was a hat-trick scored against him by Tony Kelly, but Dublin left themselves wide open. He actually won some brilliant ball against Tony Kelly that day. I'm fairly sure he caught a nice ball over him at one stage. Kelly obviously did all the damage. But I thought he was absolutely brilliant all year. If you were to pick a 3 for me, I'd probably go Rogers, O'Neill, and Paddy Doyle.
Yeah, I probably would have went Rogers, Hogan, O'Neill. And that's not to take away from Kieran Joyce, who I thought was very good again this year. I'd say Cathal O'Neill probably deserved to be in the 3 though for what he did. Nah, he'd be slightly down. No, I think he's a very good player, and he had a very good year. It's probably that Clare game. I know he was left. You could say he was thrown to the wolves somewhat, but he was following Kelly. Maybe he was a bit naive a couple of times. I think he's a very good player though, and I think he's going to be a mainstay for them over the next while. Someone just asked what age the Young Hurler of the Year was. It used to be under,
didn't they?
It used to be under 21. And then it was moved back to under 20. And then there weren't that many under 20 players actually playing senior. So it's either 21 or 22. I think it could be 22, actually.
Well, Rogers is 22 now, because that was one of the things I checked this morning when I saw the list. And I was like, okay, Cathal O'Neill is younger than Mark Rogers. So it's definitely nothing to do with age here. And to be fair, though, to Mark Rogers, who I thought was, brilliant for, most games that I saw him, I thought he was really, really good. He was the joint 4th highest scorer from play in the championship this year. So number 1 was Conor Whelan. Now, we're not going to pick our all-star team today, but Conor Whelan got 718 from play. Owen Cody got 521. Tony Kelly got 422. Then there's a host of guys who finished joint 4th. Mark Rogers with 412 was one of those. So you know, I think it's very, very unlucky. Or sorry, he's rightfully in there. Yeah, I think it's very, very unfortunate that Cathal O'Neill isn't in there.
I think it's a bit of an oversight, really, and maybe that he hasn't been thought about enough because he hasn't maybe started many games or whatever. But like, yeah, the impact he's made with the best team in the country throughout the year definitely merits him being in the three, I'd have to say.
Yeah, and look, if you're going to comment and like say to us, oh no, this lad should be in and that lad, give us your three, and we'd be happy to read them out there, because it's not an easy thing here. SSRI said, should All-Stars be selected from now on, like 3 nominations for cornerbacks, etc., for each position instead of mixing it up like what's happening at the moment? Well, look, the positions are fluid, so it makes it kind of difficult. There's a couple of lads who were picked in midfield for nominations who you'd say, oh, well, David Fitzgerald, he keeps wearing number 8, but he's quite clearly a wing forward, and wing forwards these days move up and down from midfield. Adrian Mullen often wears number 9, but does he always play as a midfielder? I would say no. Now, he does at times, but I would say no. So at times, it's like I'd actually sympathise with the guys on the committee, because, you know, I don't necessarily think that players' positions are set enough to always pick them in those positions. Is there any players that... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'd agree with you now. Like, and I still think Will O'Donoghue could end up as the All-Star number 6, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he does.
Well, he played 2 games there, so it's justifiably so. Yeah.
The two most important games of the year as well. But yeah, positions are, I don't know. I think we're probably going away from lads been picked, or 3 cornerbacks, 3 fullbacks, because like outside of, like, let's say, like Mikey Butler is cornerback, obviously, but he played wing back at different stages this year and followed players. It's very hard to put players in a box. Like Dan Morrissey, played predominantly fullback, but fullback is now a 2-man fullback line. So he's technically playing nearly as a cornerback, if you get me. So I think it's hard. They try to leave it to be as fluid as possible. But I still think even if you're picked in midfield, like, there's still a good chance that, O'Donoghue could be picked in defence despite being nominated at midfield.
Yeah, Crack of the Ash says it's an easy one to make. If you were a manager, which young hurler of the 3 would you take? Easy answer. But give us your 3. Adrian McGrath saying John Conlon should be number 6. Harnedy, 12 points for playing 4 games and set up loads for other. Very unlucky. Did he get 4 or 5 against Limerick? I can actually look that up if you want to take over the conversation.
Yeah, he was very good. When I saw Horgan nominated, I was kind of thinking maybe Harnedy should be nominated as well. It's interesting as well. Clare were beaten in the Munster final and beaten in the All-Ireland semi-final by Kilkenny, and they got 1 more nomination to Kilkenny. They got 9. Kilkenny got 8.
Well, sorry, they weren't hammered. No, they were hammered the year before. But they were disappointed. Is what.
As well as that, like, when you're looking at it from Kilkenny point of view, and you see your 2 All-Star nominations in attack are TJ Reid and Owen Cody, and you don't have anyone else. Like, that's.
But Mullen is kind of, he's
ish. I suppose Mullen was nominated for midfield. He kind of plays there a bit. Then you see there was one Kilkenny player nominated across the half-back line, David Blanchfield, who didn't play the All-Ireland final. I think the nominations show the holes that Kilkenny have and that they need to fill over the next couple of years, really.
Yeah. I'm wondering, does the odd person get nominated still on reputation? Now, I think that the guys who should have been nominated from Tipperary, and obviously 3 nominations is more than enough for Tipperary the way the season went. But I thought they should have been Jake Morris, rightly, and I thought it should have been, and people say, oh yeah, Bursley bias, but I think Dan McCormick had some big games. For example, shutting down Grode Hegarty in that Munster Championship game. And I would have said Alan Tynan. Now, there's no Tipperary player who had 5... Was it 6? We'll include the Offaly game, who had 6 brilliant games there. There's no one who had 6 brilliant games. So you can kind of pick holes in every argument, fair enough. But I would have said Alan Tynan, Dan McCormick and Jake Morris were the 3, rather than, look, Ronan Maher's brilliant player, so is Noel McGrath, and, Jake Morris is picked. But, like, to me, it was like more, let's pick the safe ones rather than the ones who probably slightly edged it. And, that would be my thought.
Yeah, I thought Noel would have been in the running for Player of the Month. I think in May. I think he was one of the best players in was it April or May? May. Then his season kind of tailed off a small bit. Listen, Tynan was probably in the running for one of them as well. And then it was just going from week to week. He was unbelievable against Cork. He was probably quiet the next 2 days. Listen, if it was up to me, Tipperary would have no nominations, being honest with you.
Yeah.
But just as well, like an indictment of Wexford, obviously, no nomination. An indictment of Waterford, no nomination. Like, to play 4 games for Waterford and not have a nomination, not have anyone in that conversation. For Wexford to play 5 games and not have any. That just kind of shows how bad their season was.
Do you think Patrick Fitzgerald might have got a nomination this year if he was started in every game, or if Desi was maybe played in full forward line throughout? Would he have got one?
Yeah, well, Patrick Fitzgerald was brilliant against Tipperary. He just didn't play enough. And Desi didn't play inside enough. Mark Fitzgerald would have been the one that maybe should have been nominated for me.
Yeah, a lot of people slating Alan Tynan here, actually. Tynan had 1.5 decent games, empty jersey after the Cork game. Jeez, that is fairly close to the bone. I thought Grode O'Connor was also very good if you wanted a Tip nominee.
I have a dog barking in the background here, so I'm going to try. I'm going to mute myself for a minute. Yeah. Grode O'Connor was good. He obviously was injured and came off that day. Who did he come off against? Against Waterford. But he was very good up until that point.
What about Tom Phelan in terms of Kilkenny lads who didn't get nominated? He was on the way to man of the match in the All-Ireland semi-final early doors until Limerick did what they do.
Yeah, in the final he was good. He's probably quiet enough up until the final, I would say.
Would you say that, yeah?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say he was outstanding going into the final, but he had a very, very good final. I would say the final was when he announced himself really on the big stage.
Do you think Cian Lynch will work his way into the team?
No. I don't think he can. I don't think he played enough. He's brilliant in the All-Ireland final, obviously, but I don't think he's given an award. Shane, I'm going to boot myself out. I'll come back in a minute. I'm going to shut this dog down for a minute.
Oh, okay, so go ahead there. What I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm going to preview a little bit of Tipperary because I have a video from the Tipcast show that I did yesterday with Shane Brophy and Dennis Kelly. So the matches this weekend are between Thurles Sarsfields and Lockmore Castellini. That's going to be on RTE2 on Saturday evening. And then there's also a fairly tasty match between Killadangan and Toomey Vara. So if you just give me a moment there, I'm just going to play a little bit of the conversation that we had about that with Dennis Kelly and Shane Brophy. In class here now, because they had group wins over Killarwan, who aren't themselves this season. Moycarkey Burris, Ross Gray, both teams that are trying to really establish themselves as senior clubs and are doing so. And then the last day out against Clonolty, is Killadangan a fair old step up?
It is, I suppose. The other teams, to be fair to them, they're not all shooting the lights out. And, Clonolty were hit and miss this year as well. And now they're gone into the relegation. And, you wouldn't be between themselves and Brackens, it's not a given that they're going to win that either. So, you suppose, they have got through nicely and the draw has been nice to them. But at the same time, I like to look up there, the last day in that extra time, they looked like, they were going to maybe, there was a lot of young lads there and they could have put their heads down after getting caught at the end, but they didn't. Kicked on and the likes of Adam Hall, Kenny Ryan, as you say, Darragh McCarthy still had a great game. There was some serious performances, so they really kicked on. So that was real hope for Toom, I'd say. And again, they're going in here now. They've had a great year. They got to a semi-final. It's probably more than they were expecting, maybe starting off. So I don't think there's a fierce lot of pressure on them. I'd be saying they'll probably throw off the shackles and have a go and see how they get on,
Yeah, I remember in 2018 when they got to the semi, they never really threw off the shackles that day against Clonolty Rossmore. But I having Ken Dunn as manager there, and the guy that's about 10 county medals he has won, and tradition counts for a lot, I think, in these games. Ken will have those guys going out there believing that they're good enough to win the game. They're wearing that green and gold jersey, and look, it's Killadangan have had their number between minor under 31 senior over the last decade or so, but that's not to say this would be the day that had Toom begin to fight back and what a day it would be but you just feel get Killadangan. I think I've been saying it all along, I think Killadangan at their best are probably still the best team in the county when they're humming like they were the second half against Borrisalina.
Okay, so there's plenty more Tipcast there if you want to dig it out on YouTube or on different social channels there with the Nina Guardian. So, those two games in Tipperary this weekend, one of them's going to be on television, as I just mentioned there before you dropped off for a second. Thurles Sarsfields against Lockmore Castellini. There's a lot of very, very well-known players involved in that fixture, so it should be fairly tasty.
Oh, that's one of the games of the weekend, Shane. And good to see it. Good to see it on the box as well. Thurles have turned the screw when it looked like it could be a potentially disappointing season. They hadn't really caught fire. They are catching fire now at the perfect time. Obviously interesting to see as well. Paddy Matters, obviously manager, he's stepping away from Tipperary for 2024 due to work commitments as well. Part of me was kind of thinking with everything he had going on as well, wasn't he involved with the Thurles CBS Harty team, involved with Thurles Sarsfields, involved with Tipperary. Talk about going out of the inter-county scene and like throwing yourself like into absolutely everything. So I'd say maybe something had to give there as well. But that's a really tasty game. Lockmore were beaten in the football, obviously last weekend by Mile Rovers. If they were able to get over the semi-final and just be focusing on hurling for a couple of weeks, I'd say that would probably be to their benefit as well. Lockmore were slow starters in their quarter-final, with just that bit of experience and nous and know-how probably really told in that second half. It was Ross Gray that they beat in the quarter-final, wasn't it? Lockmore?
Yeah, by a point, yeah.
Yeah, even though Ross Gray fought back for the last maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I think Lockmore were 4 up. Tough
Ross
game
Gray
to call.
could have won that game now. They're like that's a typical example now of a team that hasn't been at this stage of the competition for a while and maybe doesn't have that sort of know-how in the big games that Lockmore absolutely have. But the hurling that Ross Gray produced that day showed that they're well able to compete with probably anyone. If you can compete with Lockmore, you can pretty much compete with anybody. But yeah, I just wonder, is this the day that not having Joey Hennessy and John Maher in the full and centre-back slots are finally going to come home to roost for Lockmore? Maybe it did in the football championship against Mile Rovers last weekend. And when you look at the quality that Thurles have, you know, there's probably, like, maybe Stephen Cahill will be playing midfield. Maybe he'll move up to centre forward and try and pick off scores if Brian McGrath isn't going to mark him tightly. But the work rate of this Thurles forward line, the likes of Conor Stakelin leading it, Dara Stakelin, will Paddy Creedon be back starting this game? They just have so many top players in there. And the spine of the defence as well. Like, you're not going to catch too many high balls over Dennis Maher at fullback and Ronan Maher at centre back. Like, to me, it just seems like Thurles have more of the A side, if you will.
How do you see Lockmore trying to work around Ronan Maher? Because like he has been, and that's obviously his positioning helps greatly, but teams are making a bit of a hero of him as well. And that's the last person you want to be putting ball down on top of. It's the last person you want in the ball because he's such a distributor. Like, John has predominantly played inside. He'd never go out to 11 and force him to mark or anything like that and pick off scores, or because if he's inside and Ronan Maher sitting in front of him, like, surely that's to Thurles's benefit, and John McGrath's going to be curtailed somewhat from play. Would he go out to 11 maybe and plant himself out around the 65?
But like, would that really matter? Because he's like, what'll happen is another marker will come out on him anyway, and then Ronan will just drop back another 10 yards or shift another few yards away. You're nearly going to have to get it. If you want to go down that route, it's a case of, do we decide we're going to try and avoid him with the ball, which means being more patient working out of the back, and because they're a dual club who are used to being patient on the ball, that might be where Lockmore say, we're just going to work it out and let Ronan be free, and we're going to try and bypass him. But obviously, if Thurles kind of work really hard and manage to upset them bringing out the ball, Ronan's going to end up getting on a lot of 50-50 ball that's just trucked upfield. So then the other option is, do you bring someone out to man mark him? And I don't think you're going to use John McGrath to man mark him because he's one of your best scorers and he gets man of the match so often. So you're going to want to keep Liam McGrath close to goal as well. He's been playing good. He's been a nice target man inside, great movement, all that kind of stuff. So then it's just trying to pick someone and you're saying, okay, we want you to totally dedicate your game or sacrifice your game to man mark him. But then, like, there are other players around him, like Dennis Maher could end up sweeping. And I know it didn't work great when he was the sweeper against Kildangan the first day, but the team has really come on since then. You know, maybe James Armstrong, who was the centre back for the under-20s, or was it minors there a couple of years ago, like, they have quality players. So I don't know, what would you do, like, in a situation like this? Because previously it was like, oh God, don't make a hero of Paddy Maher if he's going to be sweeping. I remember this being the conversation around Borrisley heading into that county final in 2017 or 16, whichever year it was. Like, what way would you fall on here? Would you be like, okay, Lockmore, we'll trust working it out of the back, even though we're missing our 3 and our 6 this year? Or are you like, we man mark him and try and just get stuck into it?
I've seen decent bits of it, but I probably haven't seen enough of Thurles to know whether we should actually send a fella after him.
Like, generally, what how would you feel about it?
I'd probably be looking at maybe to try and beat them from out the pitch a good bit more, to be honest with you, and to be trying to hit 23 or 24 points or something like that, and not putting a load of ball in around in those areas maybe. And then when it's like, when you're putting ball in those areas, he sits back and he cleans up or whatever. If you start shooting from out the field, you're posing the question, and Rowan's not in the game that much, and he's kind of thinking, and his manager thinking, we need to get him on the ball. So all of a sudden he goes out, he pushes out a small bit, then the ball goes in when there's less protection inside, if you get me. That's kind of the way I'd be trying to play it. But I think Lockmore maybe might try and beat them from out the pitch a bit, or at least show that they can score from out the pitch. Not be horse and ball in around him and getting him on the ball a lot, because like a lot of the time, don't know what the percentages would be, but how many Thurles scores come from Ronan having been on the ball and delivering a good ball up the pitch, or delivering a ball through the lines or whatever. So maybe Lockmore need to try and, I wouldn't be man marking him, I don't think. I'd be just trying to maybe play around him and try and score from distance maybe a bit more.
Yeah, the likes of Ed Connolly, who's been, playing really well after coming back from the Cruciate, like he has to be very, very busy, getting a lot of tackles in, getting his scores in. Kieran Connolly, who I think last day was his first day out, truly coming back as a starter after injury, and he started very well, but maybe faded out of the game a little bit. So this is why the more I go through it, and I'm like, okay, so Noel McGrath, he didn't play football last weekend and he came off against Roscrea because of what I believe is a hip injury. Is he right for this game? Like, is Kieran Connolly going to be able to sustain it for 60 minutes? Is the John Maher and Joey Hennessy absences, are they going to finally come home to roost? That's why I can't move away from a Thurles team who've just been humming so well. Leave the Kildangan game out of it when they didn't have Ronan Maher. That tells you how important he is. I can't move away from Thurles winning this game, and I think they could win it by 6.
Well, there's a lot of questions around Lockmore, but obviously big names that they're missing, big players, whether they're going to be 100%, whether they're going to be able to sustain an effort against the Thurles team. I don't think, you don't know whether Paddy Creedon is going to start or not, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. He's going to be a big impact off the bench whenever he does come in, but there are a lot less questions you'd imagine about Thurles. You've a fair idea what you're going to get now after recent weeks, and you know who they're going to have on the pitch. From a Lockmore point of view, can they make it a big physical battle maybe against Thurles, who the likes of Stephen Cahill?
Good idea.
Up around their forward line, of a lot more kind of nippier kind of forwards, I would have said.
McCormick, McCarthy though, Connor Stakem could be up there, But they do, I do agree, they do have 2 or 3 lads who are smaller profile.
And obviously, as we were saying with Nickey, things get a bit more tricky for those players around this time of the year. It's less of the silky, smaller players maybe that excel at this time of the year. But I would be leaning towards the same as yourself. And I do think Thurles will see it out probably by 3 or 4 in the wind-up.
Yeah, actually, just something. We have the other game, Kildangan against Toomevara. Toomevara haven't been at a final for 17 years, I don't think. Kildangan are looking to make it, I think, their 5th final since 2016. Having only won one of those, and that was the year they didn't get through to represent Tipperary and Munster, which I'm sure is a massive frustration of theirs. And I'm just wondering, Kildangan have had some of their injury issues. We haven't seen Willie Connors as a starter now. I'm not sure how much he's able to play at the moment. James Quigley, I think, only came back in the last day. Toomevara are one of these teams that seem to have common players. Adam Hall is the one that kind of stood out lately. Came on and scored 2-3 the last day. Darren McCarthy seems to be a real common player. And the other lads over the course of the pitch, like Josh McCarthy, Mark McCarthy. I feel like I'm just naming a load of McCarthys here. Robbie Cork is another good player. But there's more of, their stars are more younger players, I would have said. Now, maybe some lads, people in Toom would argue otherwise. But Kildangan are the seasoned team. You look at the amount of players that have been on Tipperary panels, and I would say they should nearly be looking at that and saying, we're going to prove everyone in Tip that dropping basically all of our players off the county panel, Barry Hogan aside, we're going to show you what a mistake that is. So you've got a seasoned team against a young team in a way.
Yeah, you'd have to say, I know they've been in around, as you said, this would be their 5th final since 2016, but they've probably underachieved in a way for the talent that they have. I thought they would have added to the 2020 title since, and I know they were, was it a semi-final? They were beaten in 2021, and then they were beaten in a replay by Kilruane last year. But you'd have to say, definitely on paper for the talent that they have. And if they click on a given day, you just think they're going to be very, very hard beaten. And they've clicked at different stages in different games. Hasn't happened for 60 minutes. I think it's pretty heartening for them that Billy Seymour seems to be a lot more consistent and delivering a lot more. He seems to be the focal point now and really taking a bit of a burden on his shoulders, which is good. You know what you're going to get from Paul Flynn on a given day. When you throw in Alan Flynn, Willie Connors mightn't be 100% fit. James Quigley and a few others, there's a fair bit of talent there. As you say, Toom are the coming team. This might come a tiny bit maybe too soon for them. But saying that, they have a nice little monkey off their back after beating Clonalty after extra time the last day. And I could imagine they'd be 10 feet tall after that and probably thinking anything is possible. I kind of contradicted myself here because they've been inconsistent and maybe haven't delivered and gotten over the line in the last couple of years. But I still think Kildangan have the talent. And I think their time to deliver is now, really, because if you look at, like, if this year passes by, that's 3 years since they won the county title. Do you know what I mean? If this year passes by without winning one, then all of a sudden, lads are a lot older. Maybe you don't know who they'll have available to them next year. I think they need to seize this kind of moment, and I think they just about will.
You're going to start slating them like you do Clonlara for not, winning enough fairly soon.
No, it's far too close to my doorstep to be slating now.
Ken Dunn, he's a shrewd man according to River Power. There, he's doing a great job with Toomey Barra this year. Was there a more deadly free taker at club level than Ken Dunn? And who else comes to mind when you think of club free taker? Oh my God, how many hearts did he break over the years?
Yeah, we would have played them back in the day when he would have been playing towards the tail end of his career. It's very, very consistent. We used to always have the Midland Tribune in our house, and they'd always have the North Tip, any of the North Tip games, and it was always Ken Dunn 087F or whatever. Like every game was like that. He was so
You're saying he
consistent.
couldn't score from play because it sounds like it.
Well, he scored one from play, that and the example that I've given there.
I'm joking, everyone knows.
He would be one, like, even like the likes of Willie Cleary last year was brilliant on the frees for Kilruane, like a fella that probably has not really played much county at any grades or whatever.
Hadn't been much for free taker. Hadn't been noted as a free taker before that, or long before that.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You probably caught me on the hop there, but there probably are a good few lads that can't think of his name. That plays for St. Martin's in Wexford. Very, very good free taker. Yeah, like those sort of guys. Generally very reliable on a place ball. Mightn't have played any senior inter-county or that. There's a few of them in nearly. If you go around the houses around the country, there's probably a good 2 or 3 in every county that are so reliable, and you'd have them on frees for the county. Maybe they're maybe not up to inter-county standard, or maybe lacking mobility, maybe for county standard sometimes. But at club level, just absolutely deadly. Like you'd probably put your life on the likes of Ken Dunn and others at club level if you needed a free to win a game or draw a game.
Yeah, River Power. Ken Dunn survived emergency brain surgery a few years ago. Some man to be back at it. Cash is king. He's the first of our viewers to deliver in terms of brilliant free takers at club level. Nickey Clear, Venice Bridge. Get your comments in. We'd be very disappointed if we didn't get a few tasty little comments, whether it's hurling or football. Who are the brilliant club free takers? We will move on to the relegation semi-finals. Clonalty, Rossmore, who were obviously only playing in a quarter-final last week. They're up against JK Brackens, of course, in Tipperary. You can both be in the knockout stages and relegation at the one time. And Kilruane McDonough's against Upperchurch Drumban. 2 teams who would, obviously Kilruane are the reigning county champions. Can you think of any examples of a reigning county champion getting relegated?
Oh, getting relegated the year after.
Yeah.
Austin Stacks in Kerry, I think. Yeah, 2021 Munster finalist, relegated the year after, not promoted this year. It's not something that happens too often, you'd have to say. Like, geez, when you look at the 4 teams there, like Clonalty, obviously champions in 18, Bracken's good, solid, real consistent side, Paddy Cadell back fit, Kilruane McDonough's, again, they'd probably underachieved until last year, but county champions last year. And Upperchurch, we've played them up and down as well. They've been in a decent few quarterfinals, good, consistent side. Someone big is going to go down anyway. I would
one of them teams would walk awfully, wouldn't they?
Not all.
I'm only winding you up. Okay, let's move on to the Antrim Hurling Championship this weekend. Cushendollar against Ballycastle and Dunloy against Lochgiel. So I suppose if you wanted to big up the underdogs here, you'd say that Ballycastle and Lochgiel have both played quarterfinals, whereas Cushendall and Dunloy have probably been waiting in the wings for a month. Now, the thing is, Cushendall, obviously, very seasoned team. They've Neil McManus, who probably we should have mentioned in terms of not being nominated for an All-Star after the season he's had and the body of work he's put in over 17 seasons. But they'll be heavy favourites here. They beat Ballycastle well in the first round, even though Ballycastle were missing an awful lot of players in that at the start of the championship. Ballycastle, they're likely to be missing Neil McCauley and Kieran Clark even still. But, the players like Conor Boyd, James McCauley, Tiernan Smith, they're all playing well. And they'd be hoping that, you know, they can obviously get a bit of change, the latter two, from Paddy Burke and Owen Campbell, whichever way they'll line up. Dunloy chasing a double. I mean, Dunloy, from what I hear, they only pick up the footballs now and again. And in a way, it kind of makes a mockery of the football championship in Antrim. Now, they have unbelievable athletes, which is obviously a prerequisite for a really strong football team. But it kind of makes a mockery of the other teams, that a team who doesn't really pick up a football all that often is in a county final. And I'm not saying that trying to disparage anybody, but that's kind of the facts of it.
Yeah, we were chatting about this on Monday. It is a bit of a mad one. They train very little by all accounts. I wonder, you know, this is a bit maybe alien to them, going that deep into a football championship where they actually had a football championship game the week before a hurling semi-final against another big hitter. That's probably something that's a bit alien to them. So you wonder if there's going to be any effects of that. And I know you were chatting a few lads up there, and Keelan Malloy could be carrying a bit of an ankle injury coming into this weekend. So that's maybe a bit of a knock-on effect of that. He's obviously one of Dunloy's best, and obviously one of Antrim's best, and they can ill afford to be without him. Lochiel, obviously, two-time All-Ireland club champions. They hadn't been playing that well, but they were very good by all accounts when they put up a massive score against St. John's, and I think they're going with a fair bit of youth here as well. So maybe they'll sense maybe the door is ever so slightly ajar, because Dunloy's, not saying that their eyes were on football that much, but just the fact that they've probably had a good bit more, you know, a load on their bodies the last couple of weeks, maybe compared to other years. But they are the reigning Antrim and Ulster champions. They're All-Ireland finalists last year, took down Thomas's in the semi-final. Anything other than a win for Dunloy would be really disappointing. But again, history will tell you down through the years when they've played Lochiel, there hasn't been that much in them, and Lochiel can come with a team fairly quickly, as they did the guts of about a decade ago to win a Club All-Ireland.
Yeah, I think some of their, you know, more seasoned players did retire last year, and they're relying a lot on youth there in Lochiel. And James McNaughton was saying in the Irish News, look, we're massive rivals, and if you see your rival winning, it's not the greatest sight in the world. I work with a couple of them down at Cray Concrete. Whenever they first won the championship, I was in the same office as Owen O'Neill, so there was a bit of crack. Now it's mostly just supporters I'm working with. There's always that wee added incentive when you're playing Dunloy, because you're so close to them. And Dunloy, if they win this championship, and if they also win the football, they are on a collision course to play Schlockneil in both codes. You know, this is assuming that both teams go ahead and continue to win. That would be mad to meet each other in both codes.
Yeah,
you know?
that'd be crazy. I don't know. It'd be a fair culture shock, I'd say, if they played Schlockneil in football now. That could be there's levels, and I'd say that could be a different few levels ahead. Schlockneil obviously have to get over Glen and a few more first, but just something McNaughton said there about Dunloy and Lochiel, saying we're massive rivals, and if you see a rival winning, it's not the greatest sight in the world. Like, it's awful. Like, there's nothing worse than you're beaten in a county final or semi-final or quarter-final, and you see, you know, well, there's several teams that you might dislike, but there's probably one or two in particular that you do not want to see winning, and that's just being honest. And my God, it's a long winter when they keep on winning, and every weekend comes around that they're playing, and you're dreading it. There's no point saying anything different. And
then when that team loses, the WhatsApp group in your own club is absolutely humming.
Yeah, but it is, but you're kind of waiting for that, and that can be a while coming if they go on a run in the province or something like that as well. Yeah, it's not nice at all. Like, I remember when I was teaching and that, and you go in on a Monday morning after losing a big game, and I was teaching out in Banner, and say they're after winning a big game. It's horrible. It's horrible. You're meeting kids on the corner or in the corridor there, and they're chawing at you. Hey, weren't much good at the weekend, sir. And this kind of crack. And you know what I mean? It's just, the winters can be very, very long and lonely.
Yeah, the Galway quarterfinals are on this weekend. Castlegar will meet Turlockmore. St. Thomas's do battle with Capitagle. Loughrea will meet Claren Bridge. So that's the 2022 finalists against the 2021 finalists, and More and More Marie are against Sarsfields. Right, so St. Thomas's will continue to be the top dog base. Is it a 5 in a row they've won, or is it 6?
They're going for 6.
They're going for 6. So it'd be hard to go against them here. Davy Burke not being available this year is probably, you know, that's a fair old blow, but it still feels like they have the quality to at least get to a final. Like, to your money, are Loughrea the team that have the best chance of dethroning them because of taking them to a replay last year. They probably feel like, look, we have it in us to match and beat this team.
Yeah, what I saw in Loughrea last year, and by all accounts, any bits I've seen this year, they definitely haven't regressed anyway. They're probably a little bit better even than they were last year. Interesting, John Conlon's involved with them. Very busy times for him, obviously, preparing for a Clare semi-final and been involved with Loughrea as well. Clarenbridge were very, very good coming from that senior B group in 2021, getting all the way to the final, only beaten maybe 2 points, I think. Weren't great last year. Looked to be an awful lot better this year. They obviously have... I was going to say they have Aaron Ireland involved, but they don't because he's only under 17. It was an under...
Refuses to grow up in time.
There was did play Oranmore Marie in some under 20 game. I saw the highlights of it. He was just putting over points from everywhere there last week. But Clarenbridge still have plenty of talent. They were well ahead against Ardratton and kind of let them maybe back into the game. If Ardratton had Johnny Glynn, maybe it would have been a different story. But Loughrea are probably the team most likely to take Thomas's down or the most likely to take on that throne. But I don't see there been too much in that game at the weekend between them and Clarenbridge, being honest with you.
Yeah. Okay, the Cork semi-finals are also on this weekend. Sarsfields will play Immakilly. So that's an East Cork derby. Sars, who are already league champions, and they've been impressive lately. We saw them on TV a couple of weeks ago. They have Jack O'Connor, Aaron Myers, Luke Elliott, Craig Leahy, Colin McCarthy, Paul Leopold. They're all in good form. For Immakilly, Seamus Harnedy, who we've mentioned already on the show, he's the star turn really here. Bill Cooper, he's the name that people will know from his stint in midfield with Cork. They've also got a couple of other good players, William Leahy, Jack Leahy, Sean Desmond, Dermot Healy, Dara O'Leary. They're all playing well. St. Finbarrs will meet Middleton in the other semi-final. So it's the reigning champions against the champions of 2021. By the way, Middleton are the team that they've probably been a month sitting on the shelf now waiting because of their record in the group. They didn't have to play a quarter-final. So for Middleton, they're unbeaten, and obviously if they topped the groups and had the best record, they were very good in that stage. But there are injury concerns around Sam Quirke and Conor Lehane, so you'd imagine they'd need a full hand here. But they do have Tommy O'Connell, Luke O'Farrell, who's a player I think we both liked when he was playing with Cork over the years, Brian Saunderson, Cormac Basang, Beastings, and Sean O'Leary Hayes. And then for Finbarrs, I mean, they're fairly well stacked with the Cahillans, Jack, Damien, and Connor. And you have Billy Hennessy, who was a panellist a couple of years ago, briefly a football panellist. Brian Hayes, William Buckley, Ben Cunningham, players. There's a lot of quality in there. Like, that has the potential to be a cracking match. And obviously, because it's in the Cork Championship, there won't be any tackles. I'm joking. I just think the Bars have kind of rode out that bit of a rocky kind of a period that they had, where there were a lot of lads in the States, and they just kind of needed to survive, keep the train on the tracks. They did just about. They were good enough in their quarterfinal against Charleville with Ben Cunningham putting up a big score. And I just think when you go down through what they have, they only need 3 or 4 of them to click on a given day. And I just think we'd probably talk about, tongue in cheek about the lack of tackling or physicality in the Cork Championship. But the Bards are the one outlier to that. They are a physical team. They will enforce their will on a game. And I really liked that last year, even against Ballyhale, when they brought them right down the stretch and could have easily gotten a draw. And obviously had a harsh sending off in that game too. I think the Bars will continue to come good, and I think they'll win out Cork overall. And I think they'll just about see off Middleton at the weekend. Okay, then there's the Senior A Hurling Championship in Cork, which is the level beneath Premier Senior as well, because everyone has to sound like they're the best in the world. Carrigtwohill, they'll play Newcestown. So Newcestown are in the semi-finals of both codes, and it's dual players that are backbone in them: Owen Collins, Edmund Keneally, Jack Mead, Richie O'Sullivan, and Luke Mead, who people will know as well. They're all in good form. And Carrigtwohill are under Frank Flannery. They topped their group, went straight to the semi-final, and have some good players there, and Liam Gosnell, Jay Horgan, Keane Reardon, Thomas Horgan, James Mulcahy. Bride Rovers will play Blarney in the other semi-final. So the two Roaches, Brian and Owen, who people would have seen in the Cork panel, they're playing for Bride Rovers. Patrick O'Flynn, Adam Walsh, Conrad Ryan, and Ronan O'Connell, they're all playing well. They won't have Jason Mannix. He got a red card against Iriscara. And for Blarney, everyone knows about Mark Coleman, so he's been back and flying. Shane Barrett is there. Porrick Power, who was very good in the league. Was it that Wexford game particularly stood out?
Yeah.
And a couple of other lads in good form as well. You might take us into the, actually, Brian Roach versus Shane Barrett will be some battle. Hurling 1, 2, 3, 4, are you expecting them to come up head-to-head? That'd be an interesting battle for sure. You might take us into the Limerick Championship.
Yeah, Limerick Senior Hurling Championship quarterfinals. This is where the two teams from the B come up against third and fourth in the A. So Doon against Mungret St. Paul's. Mungret they have their Senior A status secured for next year, so they're going up into the, I suppose, the Shark Tank that is the Senior A Championship in Limerick. They play Doon this weekend. As I said on Monday's show, Doon have won the games that they, were expected to win, beat Kildimo. And the last day they beat South Liberties to beat earlier on in the group as well. They beat a hand the last day, excuse me. Mungret will see this as an opportunity. I think South Liberties winning their quarterfinal last year was the first time in a long time where a team coming up from the B had actually won a quarterfinal. But I think they'll half fancy their chances. Doon are still missing some of their big players, and for the first championship game this year, they're missing all 6 backs from last year. Richie English is obviously still out. Josh Ryan is out. Won't be much in this game. Don't expect there to be much in this game. And then the other quarterfinals, Ballybrown against Partridge. So they're both in the same parish, which obviously, we're talking about not liking to see one of your main rivals going well. That's definitely the case, I imagine, here. They actually met in the 2016 county final. Patrickswell annihilated them. Actually, it was 126-17. Patrickswell are obviously finished third in the group, but some of what they did in the group stages was really, really impressive. And they're firm enough favourites in my book there, obviously, with Dermot Burns, Keane Lynch, Aaron Gillan, and Jason Gillan in goals, and Kevin O'Brien up in the forward line as well. I'd be expecting Patrickswell to come out on top in that one.
For sure. The Dublin quarterfinals are on this weekend. Ballyboden St. Enda's against Coola. And speaking from experience, that's always a very, very physical game. And it generally goes down to the wire. So I'm just wondering, now that the Coola footballers have been knocked out by an impressive St. Jude's team last weekend, will Con O'Callaghan be back?
You surely know the answer to that question. Don't be throwing out a question. You know the answer to that question.
I'm not a training. So, look, will he be playing this weekend? Because obviously he's needed. When we know about all the players that aren't there anymore, or, Paul Shuta isn't there, Oisin Goff, he's retired. Mark Shuta is out this year with injury. Con obviously hasn't been there as well. So there's, a lot of players that are no longer there. David Tracy's in Australia, as is Keane O'Callaghan. I've named a lot of players there who've played for Dublin over the years. So it's very hard to sort of absorb that and go again. And Ballyboden will obviously be thinking there's a right good opportunity of getting back into a county semi-final here. Seriously, always such physical games and very enjoyable games. They're games I always really, really enjoy. And then the other one is Kilmacud Crokes against Nafina. Now, Donald Burke is out for the rest of the club season anyway. So you'd have to go Crokes all the way. To be fair, Ronan Hayes hasn't been seen this year yet. Davy Crowe, who people will probably know from the Dublin under-20s and from Kilmacud's run in the last, not last year because he'd done his cruciate, but the year before. They're obviously down players too, but I can't see past Crokes here. I think Nafina will give them a right good game, and there won't be that much in it for a finish, but you'd have to go with Crokes.
Yeah, well, if you're saying about Donald Burke not being around, we don't really know whether Liam Rush is about either, or I don't think he has been about. So that's a couple of that's two
AJ Murphy's going to have to go to town, really.
Yeah. And the Currys are going to have to really, really deliver. But no, I liked what I saw with Crokes the last 2 years. It was just a matter of getting over the line in that final in extra time. Thought they were good last year with a predominantly new team. All those kind of new in inverted commas players have more experience now this year, and if they can just get Ronan Hayes back into the mix and fit, I'd expect Kilmacud to come through there. In the relegation finals, then you have Whitehall against Fogs and Oliver Plunkett's against Bridget's. The losers of each of those two games go down. Then in the Offaly Senior Hurling Championship semi-finals, you have Kilcormac Kalati against Rhinus on one side, Ballinamere against Shinrone on the other side.
You want all 4 teams to lose, surely?
I don't pay too much attention to odds at different stages, but amazingly, Shinrone are outsiders at 4 to win the county title. Yeah, I find that very strange, particularly based off their quarterfinal win against Borough after extra time, where they were the better team and deserved to win the game, in fairness, in normal time and in extra time. And particularly because they're playing Ballinamere, they're underdogs to win that game, which I find very, very surprising, I have to say. And I do think we often talk about teams being able to get the job done when they get over the line or win a county title. And Shinrone got over the line last in a game that they probably wouldn't have had before. And it was basically the residue of last year's county final win. It just carries you. You believe you're going to win. You've had turbulence in games and you're just able to manage the situation. And I think they'll see off Ballinamere, who are in their first semi-final in a long, long time. Obviously, we beat them in a quarter final, I think, last year. They've Dan Ravenhill on board now this year because he's our minor. His brother Ross, obviously, Kieran Burke, Brian Dignan. But I'd still be fancying, and they play a nice style by all accounts, and they've been out of football the guts of a month now, so they've just been focusing on the small ball. They'll give it a good shot, but I still think Shinrone will come through there. And Kilcormac and Rhinus, who have met in a lot of finals in the last 4 or 5 years, Kilcormac were impressive enough throughout the group stages, top their group. I'm not sure. I don't think Rhinus are as strong now as they were a couple of years ago when they did 3 in a row. And obviously Kilcormac have that influx of young blood, the likes of Adam Screeney and Breckin Kavanagh, and just be expecting them to get the job done by 3 or 4 in that semi-final.
Of the 3 of the 4 teams, Shinrone last year, their first ever, or was it first in 1960?
First ever. Yeah.
St. Rhinus the year before finished after 3 in a row. Kilcormac back in 2017, they'd previously won them in 2012, 13, 14. Those 3 teams, they all have players who've won it, who've been there. Ballinamere haven't, but you've named out some serious quality there. So are they in, like Kilcormac, people feel are the common team that will take over, but are Ballinamere thereabouts as well?
They're thereabouts, yeah. They would have won an under-21 a couple of years ago. I think Brian Dignan's team, good few. Mark Tried, it was goalie for the under-20s. It's the keeper as well. There's plenty of talent there. I think a lot of what's making them favourites in the bookmakers' mind anyway is the fact that they scored the last 7 in the group stages against Shinrone to win by 3 or 4. I still think Shinrone will come through in that game. Just about, I think the bit of know-how of the last 12 months will be crucial for them. But Ballinamere definitely going to be thereabouts over the next couple of years as well. Senior B final then, it's Kilcormac's second team against Claudia Gales. Joey Keenan, who was on the Offaly panel, he got straight red in the semi-final against us, and I think he's appealed it, but I don't know how they'd be able to find video footage of the incident. I just don't think I don't see how they're going to get him off. And Kilcormac have on their senior B team, who they got? James Matton, who was fullback for the Offaly under-20s. Dylan Hand, who was on the he's at senior B. Yeah. He's only a year out of minor, to be fair. Dylan Hand, who was on the Offaly minors last year, scored a couple of points in the All-Ireland final. Dylan Murray was a senior. Dan Kerms is full forward. They've a fair strength in depth, and they'd be fairly roaring favourites to come through that, given that Claudia Gales are going to be missing. It looks like Joey Keenan and Dylan Hyland, who were both sent off in the semi-final.
And does the Offaly Championship allow for Kilcormac to go? No. Okay.
No.
Right. So Claudia Gales are promoted no matter what.
Good question. Yeah, probably actually. Either that or I'm actually not sure of that. Either that or there'll be no relegation. I'm actually not sure of that, being honest with you. Sir Kieran were relegated from senior, but I'm not sure if you actually have to win your championship to be promoted. That's a good question. I actually don't know that. I'll find out though for Monday's show.
Yep, the Sligo Senior Hurling final is this weekend. Eastleigh against Naomh Eoin. So Eastleigh, they're looking for 4 in a row. Last year they beat Naomh Eoin again, and they got all the way to the Junior All-Ireland final. Naomh Eoin, they beat Calgary St. Joseph's in the semi-final 218-110. And there's 5 O'Kelly Lynch brothers on that team: Tony, Liam, Gerard, Fergal and Robert, managed by their father, Bill. And actually, interestingly enough, Robert, the youngest of those, was trying out for the freshers there in the past week in UCD. So I've actually seen him play. A very promising player. And actually, it brings me to a point that, look, this is early days. We've seen him in 2 trials, but some of the players that have impressed, and I'm not saying they're the only ones that have impressed, but some of the hurlers that have impressed is Robert from Sligo. He's playing quite well. A young lad from Kerry and a young lad from Roscommon. So it's actually established counties, traditional counties, whatever. But it's good to see lads from other counties where you're not always expecting players to come through from actually have been doing quite well.
That's deadly. Plus, it also means that if they're going to be involved with the likes of the UCD squad, that they're going to be exposed to lads from traditional counties and maybe methodologies that and different practices and habits that lads have in maybe stronger traditional counties, and then they'll bring them back to their club, bring them back to their county, and hopefully drive things on a bit further. So that's definitely very promising.
Yeah, the London semi-finals are on this weekend. Gabriel's against Robert Emmett and Brother Pierce is against Thomas McCurtain's.
Yeah, Gabriel's are defending champions. I think my old clubmate Neil Rogers is still involved in the management team there. Them themselves and Robert Emmett is going to be little between them. I was actually involved. I trained the Brother Pierce club briefly when I was over in England. They're coming up against McCurtain's. I said I don't have a huge amount of information them on those games. The amount of players that come and go, but from year to year, you could look at a squad from maybe last year's final, and you could think, oh yeah, if they have all them, they'll be unbelievably strong this year. There could be 7 or 8 gone with the nature of it. You just don't know. Just fly through a bit of football news, Shane. I was on a call.
Sorry, first off, before you do, we can't not mention that Brendan Bugler has joined Brian Lohan's backroom team with Clare, and of course he coached you previously, did his best with you. Obviously, you know, it's only so much.
I'm a lost cause.
But yeah, what did you make when you saw this?
Yeah, no, I wasn't that surprised because I kind of heard about it in the background that it had been going, and I believe there'll be another face brought in, and it's only a matter of the Clare Championship being over, I believe, for another person being brought in, as was the case. Clooney Quinn were beaten at the weekend. 2 days later, Tommy Corbett, who's their manager and their chairman, I believe, was announced as a selector as well. So it's a bit of a tricky time for lads that are involved with a club, because you don't want attention being taken away from your efforts with the club at that time. So it's kind of a tricky one. Brendan Bugler was involved with Davy Fitz in Wexford for a year in 2020. He's our manager for 2021, 22. I think he was involved with Loughrea actually before that in 19. And he's involved with the Clare under-20s as coach under Terence Fatty 2022 and 2023. So there's obviously a good few of them lads coming through, and he's in Flannans as well. Like, he's a fair finger on the pulse of what's actually in the county. So I by all accounts, yeah, a very, very good acquisition there. That means Sean Tracy's gone from the backroom team, James Moran is gone, and Adrian O'Brien is gone as well. Lucas Kurzenstein is in as S&C. I think we might have mentioned it on the show that Lohan has had 5 different S&C coaches in 5 years. I don't think that's true, because Shane Hassett was S&C coach in 2020 and 21, so this might be his 3rd. It's definitely not his 5th anyway. But I think Ken Ralph is still involved as a selector as well, but I don't know whether lads couldn't commit or no one just thought there was a need for a bit of a change, but definitely freshening up in Clare.
Yeah, whether it's Ken Ralph or Shane Hassett, obviously Brian Lohan wants some sort of a Tipp influence in there, so fair play to him. Do you want to talk about that football news? Kieran Donaghy, he's set to stay with Armagh for 2024, so that long trek up will continue. Paddy Talley, he's staying with Kerry as well. Ger Brennan, he's been emerging as the clear favourite to succeed Mickey Hart as Louth manager there. I'll try and grill him this evening out at UCD and see what he says to me. And we've already kind of mentioned Shane Ryan saying that the split season is great. GA star Vicky Wall set to get a 7th shot at the Olympic Games. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think she's been, from all accounts I've been hearing anyway, she's been absolutely taken to it like a duck to water the last couple of months. Obviously a massive acquisition, and you probably wouldn't say the women's game is probably not in a great spot at the moment. The senior kind of ladies team, let alone the 7s. But like, imagine if within a space of a couple of years she could be winning, you know, an intermediate All-Ireland, 2 senior All-Irelands, Player of the Year, AFLW, and now potentially an Olympian, all basically in the space of about 4 or 5 years. It's obviously fairly outstanding. And just something you mentioned there earlier, you mentioned Paddy Talley staying with Tyrone, Donaghy staying with Armagh, Cian O'Neill staying with Galway, Kevin Walsh staying with Cork. Fair commutes involved there now. Fair commutes. yeah, exactly. Jesus, it's a joke. Like, when you're putting diesel or petrol into your car, and basically the cost is like, if you put 30 quid in, you're barely getting 15 litres now. Oh my God. Like, it's actually soul destroying. It's absolutely soul destroying. And the discrepancy between a petrol station here and a petrol station there, like 10 cent or something like that, is absolutely mad. And when you go into the wrong place and you're caught for time and you have to pay the higher price, soul destroying stuff.
Yeah, you'd be main like that, all right. Hey, just Ballymacarbery are looking for 42 in a row this weekend against Cummer Rangers, and Michelle Ryan is going for her 25th county title, which is quite incredible as well. And for Cummer Rangers, they've appeared in 9 county finals since 2013 and lost them all. And I think it was Tomas McCarthy said in the Waterford News and Star that they're the Jimmy White of ladies football in Waterford, which is
poor old Jimmy. Jimmy lost the 6 world finals. The vast majority, I don't think they weren't all to Stephen Hendry, but there was definitely, I think, 4 to Stephen Hendry, 1 to John Parrott in there as well. I was just kind of thinking about other sports people who maybe unfortunately came up against, greats or whatever. Tony McCoy was champion jockey over in England, jumps jockey 20 times. Richard Johnson was runner-up something like 16 times or something to him. Like, it's a kid. You are in the shadows a bit as well. And even looking at the Mayo footballers, maybe if they hadn't come up against that great Dublin team, they probably would have got over the line in a final or two maybe as well. So sometimes it can kind of depend on what sort of an area you come around in. You can be lucky and you can be unlucky, maybe like Cummer Rangers are. But if someone's going to break their monopoly, it's surely going to be them.
Yeah, and I also think Clonagale and Roscommon, was it 3 or 4 All-Ireland finals, maybe even more actually, but about 3 or
maybe
4
5. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Buffalo Bills, didn't they lose? Was it 4 Super Bowls they lost back in the early 90s? So it's a tough one. Glen Swilly against Sean McCool's in Donegal this weekend. St. Eunan's there against Ballyshannon. Guido against Ardra, and Naomh Cunnell are against Kilcar. The Tyrone quarterfinals, these names are going to be in Irish now, and catch me out. Moortown St. Malachy's against Ergil Kieran, Eden Dork against Trillick, Ardboe meet Cole Island, and Dungannon against Tramore. They weren't in Irish. I've gotten through that okay. Mayo then Ballintubber meet Castlebar Mitchells. Knockmore do battle with Charlestown. Balna Stephenites against I think that's Belmullet. Vale on Moortade, I think that's Belmullet. And Westport against Brafey. Westport have really established themselves quite quickly since coming up from intermediate, and obviously they're the county champions and so on. Will Brafey ever get it done?
Well, with Rob Henley gone, you'd imagine that's one of their, imagine the relationship he has with the O'Shea's and the positions he's putting the ball in for them from kickouts, and how he's controlling and dictating restarts and stuff like that. That's it. That's up in Raheny now and putting over long range frees. So you'd imagine it's, I don't know, I'd say his loss probably maybe could take 2 or 3 points away from them per game, I'd say, given how he was utilised. So they could struggle. Clare semi-finals of St. Brecken's against St. Joseph's Milltown, and Cratloe against Éire Óg. Éire Óg obviously looking as a decent quarter players there, looking to bounce back from the disappointment last weekend. A couple of county finals this weekend too. Leitrim, it's Anna Sheelan, Leitrim Senior Football Championship final. It's Anna Sheelan against Gert Lettera. Is it? I'm not sure of that. Are Ballinamore not in the Leitrim Senior Football final? I'm not sure if that's correct. But definitely what it definitely is correct is the Westmeath Senior Football Championship final. St. Lomans Mullingar against Carlstown Kinnegad. Carlstown Kinnegad haven't been there in something like 25 years, managed by Jack Cooney and Pascal Kellehan. Lomans have obviously been the big kind of superpower in Westmeath in recent years, managed by Paddy Dowdall, who has 15 Westmeath Senior Championship medals, a decent few with Lomans, and probably maybe the guts of 10 maybe with Clonkill Hurlers. He retired at the end of last year and immediately took over the St. Lomans footballers. So definitely no rest for the wicked there. And there's more county final action in Carlow as well. Tinryland against Éire Óg, and there'll be a good few eyes on the Carlow Junior final, where a certain Sean O'Brien will be laying out at number 14 for the Fighting Cocks, and he's not just a token big man at the edge of the square. He's good hands and good feet. There was a video going around a couple of weeks ago of him kicking a point. I think they scored something like 5-6 in their semi-final. It was either last weekend or the weekend before. So we'll watch that. I think he's back playing with Tullow as well. Jesus, imagine coming up against that, and imagine being hung over on a Sunday morning and this fella landing in full forward on you.
The Laois semi-finals, they're also on. Greg Cullen against Port Laois. Port Laois have won 15 of the last 24 titles there. St. Joseph's are against Port Arlington, who are chasing 4 in a row. The Wexford quarterfinals will see Castletown against Starlights, Glen Barntown meet Gusserano O'Reilly's, Halfway House Bunclody. Is there a better name in Wexford football? They've actually some mad old names. Kilnairn, they'll meet, and St. Anne's Rotangan against Shelmaliers. Yeah, they definitely have some interesting names in Wexford. The Wicklow quarterfinals, Tinahely against Bray Emmett. St. Patrick's will meet. Blessington Pats are the defending champions there. Aero Greystowns, they'll play against, who's that they're playing against? AGB?
Arklow, is it Arklow Geraldines? I think it could be, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then Rathnew against Kiltegan. Longford semi-finals then as well is where we'll finish up. Killogue, Young Emmets, they're against Colmkill. So reigning champions Colmkill, they go into this semi-final clash as underdogs, surprisingly enough. Colmkill struggled in the early part of the year, getting relegated from Division 1, but their form has picked up lately. Vinnie Hurricane and Barry McKeown are back from injury. Alan McKeown is home. He'd been travelling. Killore are most people's favourites to win the championship from here with Mullinacha gone, and they should have enough experience across the pitch to see this one through. Dromard will meet Clongish in the other one, so it's, I suppose, seen locally as the tie of the weekend. Clongish are the coming force, and Longford having done the clean sweep of underage titles last year, and they look like they're going to do the same again this year. They had a big win, emphatic enough over Mullinacha, and they'll be full of confidence after that. Jack Duggan and Matthew Carey, as well as David Barden, who's back as well, they'll be looking to drive them over the line here. Dromard, they'll probably be a sterner test, and they've the firepower up front. Francis McGee, he's still the most lethal forward in the county, really, or he's up there. And Australia-bound Matt Duffy alongside Diarmaid Masterson and Ronan McIntyre. So they've plenty of class there. But I think Clongish are the ones just about to favour it. Mark O'Shea to manage the Tipperary footballers, says River Power. Is this breaking news or is this just a suggestion?
That'd be an interesting one, and I would definitely say the least. Is he involved with Listry last year? Was it Listry? I think they were beaten in the junior final by Fossa, I think.
Yeah, and obviously on Gaeltacht as well before that. Is there anything else we want to touch on before we finish up?
Yeah, just the last comment in here from Shane Power is interesting because I'm kind of hearing something similar. Well, lads, only getting to see the show now, but on Aussie taking a year out, there are a good few more waiting to announce the same. So as a Daisha fan, I'm quite concerned for next year already. Yeah, I've heard a few different names maybe that won't be involved or are going travelling. So they can ill afford to be without some of their big hitters going into 2024, particularly after a pretty disappointing and underwhelming 2023.
Yeah, and in terms of the Mark O'Shea one that River Powers has posted about there, he's saying that's a rumour. So I think that's pretty much it from the show again today. So much going on in the world of GA, and we'll be back talking about it more as well next week. So many big games coming, as we've kind of described there for the last couple of hours at this stage. Michael, we'll chat to you at the far side of the weekend.
Cheers, Shane.